Good for you, Guy. I like promptness.
Thank you, Councillor Gilby. So welcome to the Thames Basin Heath Joint Strategic Partnership Board's meeting on July the 24th. Welcome to you all. The first agenda item is the appointment of chair for the 2024-25 municipal year. So do I have any nominations, please?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Guy Gilby.
Thank you, Councillor Brunel Walker. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Southern. Over to you then, Councillor Gilby.
Thank you. Well, assuming that there are no other nominations, I'm very happy to take on the role of chair for the next municipal year. I have to say, if I can just say a few quick words, it's a really exciting project to be involved with for those of you who are new to this group. We have a fantastic team of wardens who manage the project, and I mentioned in an email that they perform miracles, and they really do. And it's, of course, not just our wardens, but you're part of a partnership that involves lots of different groups, not just councils, but various environmental groups. And I have to say, probably for most of us who are in this chat, this project is the biggest natural inheritance that we can pass on to our future generations. So please don't see this as a meeting that kind of comes out the blue twice every year. You really are part of, I think, something special, and I've really come to appreciate that over the last year. Couple of things just to say, first of all, this is obviously a time of great change. I had a look at the number of MPs around the region that's covered by the Thames Basin Heathlands, and I think it's something like 12 MPs cover the Heathlands, and fully 10 of them have changed as a result of the general election. So this, I think, raises opportunities and challenges, and clearly it's incumbent upon us as a board to engage with our councillors, not just in our area, but also our MPs too. I'll shut up now, but I think it is important for those who are new members that they all understand who everyone is. So what I'd like to do is that famous thing that's always done around this time of the year, and that's introduce everyone. So if I could look at the list of participants, and I'll call out people as they go, if you can just say a quick line about who you are, that would be most appreciated. So if I could start with Alex, please.
Morning all, my name is Alex Rossatrocus, Principal Planner at Hart District Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Benjamin.
Morning everyone, Ben James, I'm a Planning Policy Officer at Elmbridge Borough Council.
Thank you, Ben. Bob. Bob Milton. Oh, might just be, I don't know, Bob, if you can hear us, but you're on mute, but I'll move on. Let's see. Bronwyn.
Good morning, I'm Bronwyn Tinian, Senior Planning Officer at Surrey Heath Borough Council. Our usual representative for officers is Kieran Bartlett, but he's unable to attend this morning, so I'm here in lieu of him.
Thank you. Adam from Windsor of Maidenhead, Councillor Adam.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm Councillor Adam Burmange. I'm a member from Windsor of Maidenhead. I'm the Cabinet Member for Planning, Governance and Asset Management. I'm actually from the north of the borough, and only the south of the borough does touch the heathlands in our area. But I'm very interested in the project, both from a planning perspective and ecological perspective as well. So yeah, I'm happy to start my second year on the partnership board. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald.
Hello, Sean MacDonald, leader of Surrey Heath Borough Council, subbing in for Alan Ashbury. I keep changing his title, but he looks after planning enforcement and homes. I think that's all the right things.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Thank you. Councillor Sylvia White from Runnymede. I'm planning committee chair. I've also got in my ward Longcross Garden Village, which has just had approval, so it will touch on Surrey Heath. Thank you.
Thank you. Duncan.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Duncan Fisher from Woking Borough Council, where I act as a senior ecologist, and I'm here in an observer capacity.
Thank you. I'm just seeing Lily. No, I think there's a first name. I do apologise.
Hi, I'm Dr. Derwin Lively from Footprint Ecology, and I'm here to just on a one-off to report on the visitor survey.
Excellent. Emily Rush.
Morning, I'm Emily Rush. I'm an ecologist at Footprint Ecology, so also here on a one-off capacity.
Thank you. If there were elder statesmen to this committee, Councillor Jonathan Glenn would certainly be one of them. Jonathan Glenn.
That's very kind of you, Guy. And aren't the chairman getting younger? I've been on the committee on this, the Thames Basin Heath JSPB since inception. I became a Hart District Councillor in '91, Hampshire County Councillor in '97, and I currently head up scrutiny on the county. I have been involved in this, as I said, right from the start, and I'd like to echo your introductory words, Guy, that this actually is probably one of the most exciting committees or boards to be on. And we do see a lot of turnover because councillors come and go, and there's been a big change recently in the general election. And this will probably continue with the local elections, so there will still be changes. The important thing is that we have got on this board the most fantastic officers. In particular, I'd like to mention Jenny Wadham, whose mathematical brain is absolutely second to none, and who basically helps with all the money calculations. So that is my introduction to you all.
Thank you, Jonathan. Holly Gray.
Hi, this is my first time at one of these meetings, actually, because I'm new in post. I'm the new Planning and Policy Officer for BBOUT, Berks, Bucks and Oxfordshire Wildlife Trust. And normally Tom Hayward, our Senior Land Manager for Berkshire, comes to these meetings, but he's unable to come to today. He might pop in a bit later. And unfortunately, I can only be here for an hour, but I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you.
Fabulous, thank you. Victoria.
Hi, I'm Victoria, so I'm the Senior Manager of the Thames Basin Heath Partnership.
Excellent. Jade.
Morning all, Planning Policy Officer at Woking Borough Council.
Thank you. And Jenny Merton.
And I'm from Surrey Heath Borough Council's Democratic Services.
Yes, Jenny does the legwork in sorting out all our minutes and agendas and things like that. So a big thank you to Jenny for doing the hard graft on this one. Jill.
Morning, everybody. My name's Jill Peat. I'm the Planning Policy Manager at Woking Borough Council, and I work with Jade. Jade leads on this, but I'm very new to Surrey and to Woking, and I'm here to listen and learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie.
Hello, Julie Gill. I'm the Principal Environmental Policy Officer at Bracknell Forest Council.
Thank you. Councillor Dibble.
Morning, Councillor Gilby. I've known for many years. Keith Dibble, a Cabinet Member for Development and Economic Growth in Rushmore, new administration there. And I'm very pleased to be on this committee. I've been on in the past the cross boundary committee with John Glenn, so I know he's a good guy, and known Gil, a guy for a long time. But had an idiot guide through this committee yesterday, and we're told by all the officers how important it is. So I would endorse what both you and Jonathan have said, Guy, how important this is. Thank you. Looking forward to hopefully doing more than 1 year on here.
Absolutely. Liz Townsend.
Apologies for being late. My dog managed to get out of the garden and I had to go and locate him in a neighbour's. Anyway, I'm Liz Townsend. I'm from Waverley Borough Council. I'm the portfolio holder for planning, regeneration and economic development. I'm also a Surrey County Councillor as well, just for the sake of disclosure, for Cranley and Newhurst.
Fabulous. No apologies needed. I think I was in the middle of a chair update with Ruth and Victoria, and my cat started fighting with another cat. So that was a rather interesting introduction to the meeting. That was
the joys of ownership, animal ownership.
Well, keep them out of the sangs, all right?
I will do.
Councillor Brunel Walker.
Good morning, everybody. Councillor Mark Brunel Walker from Wokingham Borough Council, elected back in May this year, but I was previously a councillor for 20 years on Bracknell Forest Council, so I know Guy very well, which is why I was happy to propose him as chair. I've been a big supporter and fan of the work that this committee does, and so I was delighted when my leader asked me to serve for Wokingham Borough Council. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mark. Councillor Heath.
Morning. I've got dog fights going on here, not bad ones, but I'm similarly having some sort of entertainment in the background. But great to be here, especially on a sunny morning. I'm Marissa Heath and I'm the Cabinet Member for Environment at Surrey County Council. Hope everyone's well.
Nice to see you again.
Hello.
Likewise, Marissa, good to see you as well again. Ruth Papworth. Of course, we have two Ruths, so it's Ruth Papworth first.
Hello, I'm Ruth, and I'm a warden for the Thames Basin Heath Partnership.
Thank you. Miranda.
Hi there, thank you very much. So I'm Miranda and I am from Natural England, senior officer kind of representing the area team's sustainable development side.
Thank you. Stephen Rudd.
Hello, I'm Stephen Rudd, Principal Manager in the Thames Solent team in Natural England, and I'm responsible for the Thames Basin Heath's SAM team, so I work closely with Ruth and Victoria. I've been working in this role for over 4 years and do a variety of other stuff across Surrey, but I am sort of nominally responsible for the delivery of the SAM team. Thank you.
So a slightly important role. Someone else with a slightly important role is Ruth Shelton. So Ruth.
Hello everyone, my name is Ruth Shelton. I am the project manager for this amazing project. It's the Thames Basin Heath Special Protection Area Strategic Access Management and Monitoring Partnership. Isn't it great how that rolls off the tongue? I've been with Natural England for about 4 years now. I'm a qualified optician. I qualified in 1995, and I'm also a chartered landscape architect who specialises in landscape management. So a bit of a varied skill set, but it's great to see you all today.
Thank you, Ruth. We're almost there, everyone. Don't worry. Zoe.
Hi, I'm Senior Warden for the SAM team.
Thank you very much. Steve.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Ringham. I'm a co-leader of Runnymede Council, and I'm also Councillor White's deputy appointment for this external body.
Yes, because of course Runnymede has, what is it, 4 co-leaders of the council. Yes, I'll have to corner you one day and ask how that's working out. That's a very unique arrangement. So
please do.
Anyway, absolutely. Councillor Southern. Oh, Councillor Southern, I don't know if you're trying to speak, but you're on mute.
Apologies. Yes, I'm a councillor in Hart. I've been on the Hart District Council for 12 years, something like that. I live in Hartley-Wintney and am a member for the Hartley-Wintney ward, and of course a lot of the Hartley-Wintney ward is in the has special protection, the Thames Basin's Heath. I live very close to the Heath, and I walk up there on a very regular basis. So yeah, I have a very, very good interest in this, and I've known it for many years, having lived in Hartley for most of the last 50 odd years.
Fabulous, and it's certainly a beautiful part of the world that you live in. Tanisha.
Good morning, my name is Tanisha. I work as a planning policy officer at Waverley Borough Council. I'm here on behalf of Matthew Ellis, who is the team leader in the local plans team.
Need to increase the We need to increase the sound there. Can't really. We can hear you, but only just.
I don't know, Tanisha, if you wanted to repeat that then.
No, I could hear it, but I just
you could hear it.
Yeah.
Okay. On to Mark Turner.
Hi everyone, I'm Mark Turner, Principal Planning Officer at Natural England's National Planning Delivery Team. I'm back again for a one-off. Good to see Councillor Glenn again. I was involved in Thames Basin Heath for many years, about 16 years when I was part of the area team. I'm back today.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll be going on later to the financial state of the project, which I'm pleased to say it is in a very healthy position, and much of that credit must go to a lot of people, but one among them is Jennifer Wadham. So Jennifer.
Hello everybody, I'm Jenny Wadham. I'm a senior finance business partner at Hampshire County Council. And as has been said, Hampshire is the administrative body for the partnership, so the financial administration. And I'll be presenting the finance report a little bit later on the agenda.
Excellent. I'm conscious some people have joined late, so if you haven't introduced yourselves, give a little wave and I'll give you a moment. But otherwise we will. Yes, Bob Milton.
I'm Bob Milton. I'm Open Spaces Society representative for Surrey Heath, Waverley. I'm also I was there at the inception of the SANGS in 2002 at the the South East examination in public. I was the only non-NGO representative on the round table. I'm also the British Horse Society Common Lands Officer covering the whole of the Thames Basin Heaths.
Fabulous. So again, if we had elder statesmen, you would certainly be amongst them. So thank you all for your work, Bob. Alex Coombs.
Thank you very much indeed. My name's Alex Coombs. I'm a ward councillor for Elmbridge, representing the borough of Elmbridge, and have a very, very close affinity with the Thames and other water courses running through Elmbridge. So I'm here on behalf of Elmbridge. Thank you.
Thank you. And it looks like finally on my list, Councillor Hyman.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Jerry Hyman, Waverley Borough Council, attending as an observer as usual. Thank you.
And Chairman, can I just come back in at the very end too? I'm sorry, I didn't actually mention the real job that I've got here is that the Hampshire County Council is the banker. That's really our job. So therefore, because that is all we do, we just look after the cash and help with the investment working group. Hampshire County Council, namely myself, we don't vote. We just observe the votes. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You just keep the money rolling in, which we're very grateful for.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, unless there's anyone else, we'll get straight into the business of this agenda. So the next item on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. Before I ask for a vote, are there any questions or comments on the minutes? Councillor Alex, I don't know if that's a legacy hand.
I'm sorry, I'll lower it. Sorry.
Thank you. In that case, first comment goes to Councillor White. Councillor White.
Thank you. My only comment is I did attend and I'm not on the list. So if you could just add me, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny, if you can amend the minutes accordingly then, please. Councillor Glenn.
It was just a correction. Every now and again, my name comes up with two N's. It only has one, okay? It's a Scottish word, not American. Thank you, Chairman.
No problem again, Jenny, if you could make a note of that. Councillor Hyman.
Thank you. Yes, I'm only attending as an observer, but I attended the last meeting as an observer, but I'm shown there in the minutes as being a substitute, which I'm not.
Yes,
so that's corrected.
That will be. Jenny is conscious that I did notice, although the minutes are technically accurate, I think it had clearly been prepared by someone who was not used to doing minutes. So that feedback has been conveyed.
Right. The only thing I'd also mention is under item 8, it says it refers back to item 7, but should say 9 on your agenda documents. But I'll leave it at that for today. Thanks.
No worries.
Apart from that, it's completely correct.
Yes, there were a few little oddities in those minutes, I must admit. But yes, they are technically accurate, I do think. So if someone could, I'll happily propose them as a correct record. Do I have a second? Don't all rush at once.
I mean, just anybody. Is it?
Yeah, just anyone can propose them as a second.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. In that case, shout if you dissent. No, in that case, then that's approved as a correct record. So thank you, everyone. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is policy and legislative background for the Thames Basin Heath Partnership. And that's done by Mark Turner. So Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'll attempt to...
Before you start, can I ask people to mute themselves whilst Mark is talking? We don't want to hear any static, so thank you.
I'll attempt to share my screen. Can you let me know if you can see it, please?
We can.
Yeah, that's there, yeah.
Is it in full presenter mode? Can you see it? Okay, there we go. Is that okay?
Smashing, Mark, thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me today. As I said in my introduction, I first started working on Thames Basin Heath back in 2006, just after the project had commenced. I worked for many years, 16 years, in the area team, doing a multitude of roles, predominantly responding to casework, assessing SANGs, and working collaboratively with all of you guys, all of the local planning authorities, all the NGOs, and moved on in the last couple of years to work in a national role, embedding some of this in other strategic solutions around the country, but I'll get onto that in a second. So I can share these slides, don't get bogged down. In the first couple are a bit wordy, but effectively this all started back in 1994 when the Habitats Directives first came out as part of EU legislation. Obviously quite a long time ago. I think I was still at school at that time. But there's a quote from the legislation, and I think what I wanted to get across in this slide is that Thames Basin Heath is a really valued resource. It is quite unique, lowland heathland. There are a few sites in the southeast, but really should be valued for all of the benefits to ecology, to people, to access. They're a really valued recreational space in the three counties, and obviously with the designation of it being an SPA brings together the importance of the bird species that are present there. But obviously that started with the Habitats Directive in 1994, and then that's now been brought into UK legislation after Brexit has been adopted into UK legislation. So next up, we move forward a few years to 2005, when the Thames Basin Heath SPA itself was classified. Again, sorry, it's a bit of a wordy slide. This is taken from the actual SPA citation, and the key bit really is towards the bottom. Really hammers home how unique and important this site is. When you look at the breeding percentages of the three bird species there, nightjar, woodlark, and Dartford warbler, of the Great British population, you've got some big percentages there, 30%, 10%, just under 10%. So it just shows how important these sites are for these three birds, and how important it was, for all of us to get it right in terms of protecting them. So what happened next? The line there I've put in bold may well go down with me on my headstone when I go, and certainly the approach I also use for looking after my children. There are four key words that come out of the Habitats Directive around likely significant effect, certainty, in perpetuity, and precautionary principle. They are four quite high bars to pass in terms of planning applications getting through the habitats regulations process. Likely significant effect is, will there be an impact upon the integrity of the designated suite? certainty is what we're all looking for in terms of mitigation measures. Are they certain? Are they likely to happen? In perpetuity, that is that the mitigation measures must be around for the lifetime of the development, which I know is tremendously difficult for developers and for those of you looking after the money, because you can't put in perpetuity into a calculator. So at the minute, we largely use a minimum of 80 years. But I think the Perpetuities Act goes as high as 125 years, but Natural England's advice has usually been around a minimum of 80 years. And precautionary principle relates to if there is some evidence, there is some scientific doubt around something likely to happen, then we need to be precautionary. So back in 2005, the SPA was classified. I'm sure you know most of this already. There are 13 individual SSSIs. That is the UK English legislation that underpins what was the European legislation. And at the time, 11 local planning authorities directly impacted. And as you all know, this is set within the context of a highly economically active area. We've already heard about the regional spatial strategy. The South East Plan at the time was looking to deliver around 77,000 houses, of which around 50,000 of those were likely to be in close proximity to the SPA. So that's quite a big challenge. Obviously, a lot of extra people living in the area in close proximity to the SPA. And unfortunately, the 3 species of bird are quite vulnerable to a whole raft of impacts, which largely fall under the recreational disturbance banner, but can be anything from fire starting, depositing garden refuse, predation, as you can see there, from domestic cats, and actual walking, dog walking, human walking, riding horses, etc., across the heath. And I'll get onto the research in a sec, but the research at the time showed that the majority of visits to the SPA were coming from within 5 kilometres linear distance. That is that their postcodes of the people visiting the site were travelling up to 5k to visit the site, which I think shows again how unique and how important the site is to the local populace, and what a beautiful resource it is, and how important it, at the time, even then, it was for people's well-being, and it continues to be, as well as the local economy. But it's really difficult at the time for each individual development, whether they're a +1 windfall right the way up to the big 1,000 unit plus developments. It's quite difficult using those 4 tests there in bold to get around the habitats regulations, to embrace the habitats regulations on their own when the SPA had been classified, because it's quite often not just alone impacts that are being caused directly from each individual development. It's the in combination of up to 50,000 homes going in within 5 kilometres of the SPA. All it would take is 1 or 2 visits from each of those dwellings, a few visits a year from each of those dwellings, to have a likely significant effect. So there you can see the background of the evidence base. That's taken from the SAM, the JSPB, the TBH partnership website. And as Derwin's on the call for us to hear about some of the later work, but this all started around 2005-06 with a couple of papers done on the impacts around Thames Basin Heath and Dorset Heaths, and what makes a good alternative recreational space for people to visit. And then since then, as you can see, there's been various car park surveys, other visitor surveys on a 5-year basis. And I think it's fair to say that this strategic solution has got the most comprehensive data evidence back catalogue than any of the other strategic solutions that are out there. And it's showing that everything's working, which is great. So going back to 2005, the SPA was classified in March, and then from October there was effectively a de facto moratorium, as in no housing was being built due to the absence of mitigation and no certainty around the HRA process. Now, these were decisions made by the local planning authorities as the competent authority. Natural England were giving advice at the time, but obviously it's up to yourselves as the local planning authorities to take each individual application through the HRA process. And with the absence of any mitigation, any guidance on what mitigation could look like, it was very difficult for the local planning authorities to be able to grant planning permission. There was obviously a significant level of challenge, rebuttals, appeals. I remember on my first day in the office, back before laptops and things like that, and where you all consulted us on paper, I had a stack of correspondence about this high to get through, of planning applications that we were being consulted on and various appeals, etc. At the time, the South East Plan examination was relatively perfectly timed, because it gave us an opportunity to all get around the table and to start looking at what the solution would and could be. And from that, we've had the policy NRM6 of the South East Plan, which, again, I'm not going to take you through, I'm sure you're all very aware of, but included elements such as SANGs needed to be agreed with Natural England and really reinforced that sort of certainty point. We had the Thames Basin Heath Delivery Plan, which was the first iteration and then became the Thames Basin Heath Delivery Framework. Natural England, through giving our advice, authored the original iteration of the SANGS guidelines in 2007 and then reissued that in 2021, following on from the evidence that's been collected and also the experiences that we've all had in that time, whether that be local planning authorities, the SAM team, planners alike. There was important input at the time from ENGOs and landowners as well, having their say on what mitigation could look like. And then first up, we had the Dilly Lane decision, and one of the first SANGs was there in Hart, now known as Queen Elizabeth Fields. They all change their names from what we know as planners once they get their permission. And then the SAM project came slightly later, started with a project manager only, and has then become the amazing project that we have and that you see all of the officers today on this call. It's also where I put this in. I know you don't get caught by nutrient neutrality in this area, but it's effectively where the concept of overnight accommodation began, because we look for mitigation from any development that will lead to overnight accommodation. So it's not just your traditional C3 houses. We're looking for C2 care facilities, potentially hotels as well, and sometimes commercial development if it's in close proximity to the SPA. So the solution, and there are two pictures of probably, do I have favourites? My two favourite SANGs. On the left there, you've got Edenbrook Country Park in Hart, and on the right, you've got Buckler's Forest, what was the Crowthorne TRL location. Why do I like both of these so much? I think, A, the size, the scale of them, but also what they were beforehand and the transformation that's taken place. At Edenbrook, they wut arable fields. I remember going on the first visit, we were still in sort of foot and mouth protocols, having to put our boots through various washes before we went out on site. And you look at it now with the water bodies, with the various routes, the links up to the skate park, etc., to the north of the site. It's become a real valued commodity for the local populace there in Fleet. And similarly, same in Bracknell, that used to be the Transport Research Laboratory. And on my first visit, there was cars, skidding all over the place on the skid pan. And we actually went through sort of two iterations there, because there was an original application that went to appeal and then a second iteration. Again, really big site. Whenever we go and visit and take delegations out to look at SANGs, always really busy, lots of people using it, children learning to ride bikes, etc. So yeah, there are now, I know I mentioned it later in the presentation, but we've got 80 SANGs in Thames Basin Heath, around 2,000 hectares of new or improved green space. In these two cases, these were areas that weren't available to the local populace pre the SPA and now are available for people to use. And then part two, I've shamelessly taken a couple of clips there from the SAM team's work, and also advertising Heath Week, which is coming up very soon. Great work that the SAM team do, absolutely amazing out there in all weathers, positively reinforcing behaviours, doing, you know, in some cases, some of the monitoring work as well. I can't say enough. There aren't enough words to say what great work they do and what a real, again, commodity they are to the project. And they are definitely used as a benchmark and a template for other SAM projects around the country. Again, I'll cover that in one of my later slides. So where are we now? I've already covered some of this. Effectively, the go-to strategic solution, I think, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure all local planning authorities now have local plans, sound local plans, each with their own Thames Basin Heath policies in, which was one of the requirements from NRM6 of the South East Plan policy. The opportunities for recreation, commuting, improved physical and mental well-being off the back of these three little bird species is, you know, absolutely priceless for the local populace in your areas. Housing delivery continues. We've worked over many years to streamline the habitats regulations process. I think we've got a pretty streamlined approach now. Developers know what they need to do. They have certainty. I've spent time working with developers, done placements with developers, and they just want certainty. They don't like things coming out of left field at the last minute. And because this has been in situ now for so long, they know what they need to do. They know what the SANGS guidelines require. They can go out and either speak to the local planning authorities about strategic SANG or source their own bespoke SANG if it's needed. It's secured, you know, effectively private sector investment in the environment in perpetuity, which you know, previously no project would have done. Wildlife, finding homes in SANG. We've got otter, cinnabar, moth, rare orchids, etc. I'm sure there's loads more. I remember sitting at one of these meetings probably 10, 15 years ago, and SANGs were referred to as glorified dog toilets, which they're absolutely not. I've already covered the success of the SAM team and Heath Week. There's a comprehensive and ongoing monitoring package, which we'll hear about in a second. As I mentioned, the SAM team are leading delivery of best practice with other strategic solutions. They regularly touch base with Solent Bird Aware, Essex Bird Aware, and the planning team also share knowledge with other strategic solutions and other Natural England colleagues around the organisation. And politicians and DEFRA quite often want to come out and see it in action. I led a delegation of Homes England members of staff out to come and have a look at some of the Bracknell SANGs a few months ago, and Simon Cridland from Bracknell Forest joined us as well. And as you can see from the bottom, one of the keys is the Annex 1 bird numbers are consistently high. Obviously, there are other impacts, particularly on Dartford warbler, such as the weather. But yeah, the bird numbers are at or above what they were at classification. So my final slide. The principle of the strategic approach, strategic solutions started here, and there are now 29 other strategic solutions around the country. Dialogue between stakeholders needs to start early, and I think communication here was key. Strong evidence base is critical, both the ecological impacts and visitor. Seed funding may be necessary in some cases to realise the benefits and potential of approach. Range of expertise, everything, you know, we've got on there, legal, financial advice, etc. Really, really important. It's helped. It's not always necessary to have an impartial lead body, but certainly when kickstarting some of these projects, it's helped elsewhere at Epping Forest, Chilterns Beechwoods, having an organisation such as Natural England to facilitate the initial dialogue. Of course, each habitat site is different. Not all of them have SANG and SAM working in harness as we have in Thames Basin Heath. So we need to be flexible. Strong governance, document and strong governance is definitely required. And I've just mentioned in here, actually, the JSPB is relatively unique. There aren't that many of the strategic solutions that have a group that comes together like yourselves. So yeah, it's really beneficial to see what this group can add, and I'm sure some of the other strategic solutions will be looking at that and looking at the model. saved local planning authorities, Natural England developers countless thousands of pounds by having to do individual bespoke habitats regulations assessments, saved so much time as well. We've had to roll with legal decisions and what new governments throw at us, Brexit, community infrastructure levy, the various legal decisions, people over wind and breels and things like that. We've always had to come together as a group of officers to work through what this means for us. Too many benefits to name. And then just finally there, all of the lessons that have been learned here, most recently at Chilterns Beechwoods, the strategic solution went from start to finish, as in delivering housing, producing SANG in 9 months, which again was really strongly down to the work that had been done here, lessons that had been learned, officers speaking to officers, I think, from Guildford and Bracknell Forest as well, to learn directly what's happened down here. So I guess finally, just to echo the comments at the very beginning, that this is an amazing project and has brought so many people together and has been a massive benefit for all of the local planning authorities and all of the local people in the Thames Basin Heaths.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Don't worry, committee board members, you'll all be quizzed on this at the end of the meeting to see how much you remember, but a very thorough presentation. Thank you, Mark. Before I open it up to questions and comments, and I can see there are already questions in the chat, I would just emphasise the importance of communication. I should add that I've, as chair, have sent out a letter to all the new MPs in the region. I mentioned early on that there are now 12 MPs, 10 of whom changed at the last general election, encouraging them to engage with the SAM project, the partnership and the board. And indeed, one MP has already availed himself of that opportunity to request an on-site visit. I would also say to board members that you have an important role as well in spreading awareness about the SBA and the great work that's done. And please always be aware that we're here to help you as part of that. If you think that your colleagues could benefit from a briefing, please always know that someone like Stephen or Ruth or someone else in the team are more than happy to find time to do a briefing for the rest of your colleagues. So keep that in mind. I'll open up to questions. Councillor MacDonald, I'm conscious you've got your hand up, but I saw that Bob had some questions already in the chat. Bob, if I can perhaps ask you to speak your questions and we'll go from there.
Really, there are 4 questions. I don't suppose there will be answers straight away, or there's not necessarily, but let's go through them. Firstly, my interest, which is British Horse Society, comes up that the existing public rights on the Thames Basin East SBA include the question, yet no SANGs or otherwise have such rights of use. What is Annie's advice regarding how this affects the mitigation strategy, and is there any plans to address this anomaly? Secondly, was the evidence to the capacity increase provisions and mitigation. Is there any evidence that the capacity increase of existing public rights, and that capacity seems to be a bit like ice dancing, subject to the judge who's giving it, on the numbers on the SPA? And thirdly, can Natural England give legal interpretation of the effect of the Perpetuities and Accumulations Act, which Mark referred to, because he said the 80 years is extendable. I can see nothing in the Act that affects the decision by the JSPB that it is 80 years. And there was the last one. The last one was one. There are a number of private SANGs where SANG's provider has gone bankrupt, and the SANG is no longer usable by the public for the purpose for which it was designated. Is there any liability on the local authority or the JSPB for its maintenance?
I think I'll try and go through those in order. In terms of accessibility on the Sang, that will be a question for the local planning authority. Each local planning authority manages the access on the sites.
Mark, no, that's not right, because all the local authorities say it's because you say they don't have to give them. So I think we got a two-sided thing where there seems to be a disconnect.
Well, Natural England are only here to give advice. We don't tell people what they have to do or what they need to do.
So your advice is that your advice, as far as the local authorities have been concerned, is that
Bob,
they don't have to give them.
Chairman, I'm going to cut in here. Could you allow the officer to finish what he's saying?
That was what I'm just trying to say, Mark. Bob,
Thank
let
you.
Mark answer, and then you can come back.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Mark.
Natural England are here to give advice on whether any development is likely to cause impact to the integrity of the SPA. And from our perspective, giving advice on Sang, whether a Sang is a Sang or isn't a Sang, and whether it will meet the requirements of taking impact away from the SPA is our job. We're not here to give direct advice on what is access and what isn't accessible. That's down to the local planning authorities. And if you look at the TBH Sangs guidelines, we major on the habitat, the ecology, that kind of thing. And there are a lot of points in there where we say it's over to the local planning authorities. I apologise if you feel as though you're in a feedback loop, but that's we're not here to advise on that kind of thing. And I know we've had countless conversations on this topic over the years, Mr. Milton. In terms of Sang,
go on with the issues.
In terms of Sangs going bust, if you could let us know. I wasn't aware. Obviously, I'm not in the area team anymore, but if you could send us through a list of the Sangs that have gone bust. What we try and do, or any Sang that is in private ownership, should have step-in rights and a pot of money available for local planning authorities to step in if it's gone bust. So there shouldn't be any financial liability on individual local planning authorities. It should be accounted for through these step-in rights. But yeah, I don't know if the area team know of any, but by all means, send us through a list if any have failed. In terms of in perpetuity, again, we just give advice. Our advice is that a minimum of 80 years is fine, but some delivery bodies, some Sang owners have gone much further, and I know one of the Rushmore Sangs is on a 999-year lease from the MOD. So as long as a minimum of 80 years is being met, Natural England are happy, but each local planning authority can effectively, as the competent authority, can adopt whatever they wish in terms of in perpetuity. And then around evidence, yes, there's evidence that Sangs are working. There's evidence that more people are going to visit them. The Sang evidence was all listed. We can provide the link on the TBH partnership website. There is still a lot to do, and I'm sure when Ruth gets to her section, a project as complicated as this opens up a whole suite of new avenues of research that could keep us busy for months, years. And we are working together on a journey here going through. So we don't have the answers to absolutely everything from day one or even day 100.
Can I just the point about the private Sangs? Waverley have been notified of one for over 3 years now and have done nothing to spend any money to maintain the Sang.
Well, as I say, if you can share the details, I'm sure colleagues from Waverley on this call can catch up with the planning colleagues, my planning colleagues on this call.
Yeah.
If somebody could contact me with a contact name, then I will do that offline.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit conscious that there's probably a lot to your questions that we might need to handle offline. And certainly if you want to avail yourself, Bob, of me as well, to make me aware and use my assistance, then I'm quite happy for that to be done.
How do you want me to contact you?
Well, I will leave my email address in the chat, so you've got it there for future reference.
All right, thank you.
So conscious that there's probably a lot there to your questions that can be handled offline. Is there anything else that you want to ask at this stage, Bob?
No, that's fine.
Thank you. In that case, then I go to Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Guy. Sorry, please call me Sean. We're very informed and sorry, Heath. I'm new to a lot of this stuff, having been elected last year and made leader fairly shortly afterwards. However, as I understand it, there's a sort of policy umbrella which you described in the slides here, and I've had to work within the planning committee around. What I didn't see in some of the feedback from the team in the execution of the agreement and looking after the special areas is feedback on the encroachment of development. So that can be in absolute terms, because development is allowed, it just has to be obviously in line with the policy framework. What I didn't see was any feedback in terms of what was actually being developed and deviations from the policy, which is obviously then impacting the SPA. And I come with scars from a recent planning committee where there was a corralling effect that allowed something to go through that shouldn't have gone through. Just for the record, I didn't vote for it. Is that something that is done, and is that information then that could be fed back to this group so that we could see the effectiveness of the protection framework?
Sure. Obviously I could have, probably taken up a whole hour talking about the project. It was, I was living it for many years. I tried to filter through and give you some key headlines, but yeah, those 50,000 houses that were identified in the South East Plan all had planning permission by 2016, and the project has continued. So, houses are being delivered. The project isn't stopping anything. In terms of encroachment, as you put it, I think, applications that are being granted against the project or against our advice, that they're very few and far between. It did come across my desk, your particular case. It's very much in the minority. There were a few cases historically that Natural England had, chose to get involved in, and we did call a couple of applications in, and we have attended. I mentioned the Crowthorne TRL case. We did support the council first time around when the mitigation provided was substandard. So there doesn't tend to be that many applications that fall outside of the policy framework. But I'm not against, you bringing them to this group and talking about them. Far from it.
Okay, thank you. But I think it's good to just see cumulatively that data so that we can then see the effectiveness of the protection regime. And I apologise, I forgot to thank you for your presentation. It was very well regarded, and I look forward to looking at the detail later.
No problem.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments on Mark's report? Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, and thank you, Mark, for your presentation. I just wanted to pick up on, I think, something Councillor MacDonald just said there, and I just wondered whether or not in the format of the being a relatively newbie, in the format of the sort of the presentation and also the information that comes to us, again, would it be does it happen? Has it happened in the past? Would it be possible to have sort of like that monitoring data at all available, sort of in a standard format, so that we can look at it and compare back and forwards and things like that, just in a, as part of the papers on an ongoing basis? Because I think for me that would be really helpful. And I know within your presentation there, you said about the importance of putting ecological impacts first, and maybe this is normally done, but I was just, when I was looking through the papers, I was sort of looking for a nice quick summary that I could look at of the impacts, and I was kind of having to search through all the papers to see percentages and things. So it'd be really handy to have a little summary each time, and perhaps also just a summary of the forward plan as well, of the main points of the forward plan. For me, that would be really helpful. So I don't know about the rest of the committee. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I think I'd turn to, I haven't been on this group for a couple of years, but Ruth tends to cover, maybe not in such a succinct bite-sized that you wanted of sort of the background, but yeah, Ruth, I don't know if you want to come in. You tend to cover what's happening with monitoring and forward looks?
Yes, we do. But I'd be more than happy to talk to you, Liz, and see if there's anything that we haven't provided that would be useful and how we could do that. That would be, I'm sure, very
I suppose
doable.
probably what I'm sort of thinking that for councillors and that, I don't know, again in here is that sort of dashboard, you know, so that we can look at, you know, the main areas that we want to monitor. Obviously part of your title, as you reeled it off earlier perfectly, I'm not yet reeling it off, but that did have obviously very specific monitoring, and it would be good to just have some kind of dashboard of the key areas to be able to just look at and compare, you know, backwards.
Yeah, well, let's have a chat about what you'd like to see on that dashboard. And
well, I'm happy. Obviously, it's not just my decision, but generally, maybe it's something that, you know, we'd want to contribute to as a group.
Well, there's an opportunity for that coming up that I shall talk about later.
Fantastic. But I'm happy to talk to you as well, Ruth.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. We might just then wait until Ruth's report and we'll delve from there. But on to Adam.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And yeah, thank you, Mark, for a really informative report. It's really good to see the history laid out in that way. I wanted to sort of take a slight sidestep and just see, thinking about all the work and sort of infrastructure that's gone into interpreting the habitats regulations into this regime of SANGs and the SAM monitoring. I wonder what lessons could potentially be learnt in this sort of new area of biodiversity net gain and that management. Obviously the emphasis and the you know what's trying to be achieved as an outcome is different, but it appears to me it's sort of that there could be some there are some parallels certainly, and that there could be some really useful lessons to be learned in how we effectively manage that, and of course that's going to affect even wider, you know, a wider group of planning authorities, you know, all planning authorities rather than just ones that happen to touch the SPAs. So I wonder what Natural England's thoughts are on that.
Most definitely. I was writing a briefing paper before this call where I covered the synergy between wider green infrastructure, SANG, local nature recovery strategies, and biodiversity net gain. You know, they're all tools in a toolbox that can all be used for the environment and by all means can overlap and be used together. I'm getting asked quite often now, not that I go out on SANG visits that often, how net gain and SANG can be harnessed together. And our advice is, as long as, you know, the same piece of work isn't being paid for twice, and that the biodiversity net gain's not paying for something that's needed for the HABs regs, then it's fine. So as a very brief example, if some screening's required around the edge of a SANG, that's required to meet the SANG's guidelines, then that needs to be paid for through SANG. But if some new woodland's going to be planted, some new hedges are going in that aren't directly needed to meet the SANG's guidelines, then we've got no problem with that stacking of biodiversity net gain. And I'm seeing elsewhere in the country nutrient neutrality and SANGs being stacked, biodiversity net gain. But yeah, obviously LNRS is going to be a big thing across the country and in this area particularly coming forward. So by all means, involve your SANGs in that, because the SANGs are going to be just as important for nature as they are for people.
Well, that's really interesting. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Heath.
Yeah, thanks. I really think just to, it may have moved on from that, but to agree with or support what Liz was saying, as the newcomer to this committee, there is a whole shed load of information that's coming forward, which is really very useful. But I think to be a participant in it, it will be good to have that dashboard. But I think Ruth said she's going to cover that later. So as a newbie, I feel a little bit on the back foot, because there's so much knowledge on this group that and some really good stuff being raised. But so I might be quiet today, but next time round I'll be there. But have a sort of an easy to understand dashboard would be very, very useful. Thanks, Guy.
Thank you. I have one more question in the chat. Does anyone else wish to raise their hand and get in the queue? No, in that case, Bob, you have another question?
Oh, it's all right. I'll expect an offline answer from Mark.
Okay, Mark, have you made note of the latest question in the chat?
Yeah, I think I can give you a quick online answer, is that it supports the Fry decision supports the Elvin advice that all of the local planning authorities, or that Bracknell Forest sought back in 2005-6, that you know, a reserve matters application, if the HABS regs haven't been considered first time around, then yes, they do need to be considered, but it should be less of an issue for Thames Basin Heath, because it's been around for so long that there shouldn't be any outline permissions or any extant permissions that haven't considered the issue. The Fry case was sought on a nutrient neutrality case, and nutrient neutrality is obviously an evolving topic. So yeah.
Thank you. Unless there's any other questions or comments, once again, Mark, thank you for your time and
No
your
problem.
report. We then move on to the next agenda item, which is the summary of the SPA Visitor Survey 2023. Who will be presenting on that?
Chair, it'll be me, Derwin Liley.
Excellent. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And can I just check that people can see my screen if I just share?
Yep.
And
Yep.
have you got presenter? Can you see the slides properly?
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Derwin Liley. I'm one of the directors at Footprint. I wasn't actually involved in the recent visitor survey, but I have a long history of being directly involved in the Thames Basin Heath, and that goes right back to the original evidence base. And I acted for Natural England at the EIP on the draft delivery plan, and have appeared for Natural England at a range of public inquiries. I wasn't directly involved in the survey, but the colleagues involved, Chris, who's the main author, is away on leave. Emily is here and joined the meeting as well. Emily had only just started at Footprint when we did the survey work, so it was a bit much to ask her to do the presentation. But Emily can chip in with any questions and responses if there's things you want to ask. And the visitor surveys are just one thread, one strand in some of that monitoring data and some of that background. Visitors are in some ways the easiest things to monitor. And of course, we know that there's a direct effect from recreation on the SPA, but wildlife can go up and down. Cold winters can have an effect on Dartford warblers, for example. One of the key things about the mitigation is changing and influencing visitor behaviour and deflecting access away from the SPA. So understanding what visitors are doing is really important, but it is just one strand, and it might be just one of those bits on the dashboard that was being discussed.
Oh, Derwin, sorry, I think.
After you, Ruth.
So I was just going to say, Derwin, I think we can't hear you at the moment.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry. So we undertook surveys in 2023. These are a snapshot of use at a selection of locations around the SPA. Sorry, my mic. Can you still hear me? Good, I think.
Yes, thank you.
So these surveys involve 30 survey points with 16 hours at each survey point, 8 hours at the weekend, 8 hours on a weekday. And as part of those surveys, we counted the number of people moving past as a tally and undertook face-to-face interviews with a random sample of those people passing. This approach is our standard. We first used it on the Dorset Heaths and the Thames Basin Heaths, and I designed that survey methodology back in 2004. And we've now undertaken similar surveys using exactly the same format at over 50 European sites across England. But it goes right back to 2005. So 2023 is the one in a series of 4 visitor surveys across the SPA. And Footprint Ecology undertook the one in 2005, 2012, and 2023. And the one in 2018 was undertaken by a different consultancy. That was the EPR. All the surveys took place in August. There are slight differences each year. They're not directly the same, but 29 survey points have been consistently covered in the 3 surveys, 2012 to 2023. So we can directly compare on those 29 survey points. There they are. It's just a snapshot. Back in 2004-05, we did some work trying to map every single access point and entry point onto the SPA. I can't remember the overall totals, but it was something like 500. So we're only surveying a tiny proportion of those, but they're supposed to be representative in terms of the geographical coverage, the types of location, and they just provide a barometer. So we've just got 2 days at each, every 5 years as a snapshot of visitor use. We counted 7,208 people over 470 odd hours. The number of hours is slightly reduced from what was anticipated due to some problems on site and the surveyors having to leave early. It was antisocial behaviour. But that's equivalent to 15 people passing the surveyor per hour. And weekends roughly 1.4 times busier than weekdays. That's the people actually passing, so going backwards and forwards, entering, leaving, moving around within the SPA at the survey point. So the number entering, actually moving, say, from the car park or from the access point onto the SPA is a slightly different figure. That's 7.2 people entering per hour across all survey points. And here are the values for the previous years. So people entering per hour in 2012, 197, and that's gone up to 2012 in 2023. So that's an 8% increase from 2012 to 2023 in those people entering per hour. And if we actually look at the medians, that's the ranking all the survey points and taking the mid value of all of them, we get a difference of an increase of 36% from 2012 to 2023. Now, I mentioned they're just snapshots. Of course, the weather is slightly different. There'll be other things going on, and also the survey points change a little bit. But we can also extract the figures on housing change. And in that period, we have had something like a 35,000 increase in the number of homes, and that's using geographic data for postcodes that are established and current delivery points. So we estimate something like an increase of 11% in the number of houses in that time. So access has increased and houses have increased, as you might expect. And here are box plots showing the data for each year. So these show the 25th and 75th percentile, the boxes, and the range with odd outlying points at the top. This high one here is the lookout. The cross is the mean, and the horizontal line is the median. So you can see the median has increased and the values are showing an increase across time, but it's gradual. And here is the data per survey point. So the blue dots are 2023, 2018 are the orange squares, and 2012 the green dots. So if you're seeing a year-on-year increase at some sites, you'd expect the blue dot to be the one at the top. So for example, at top of King's Ride here, we've got the 2023 data clearly the highest, 2018 in between, and then 2012, 2013. You can see that's not consistent across all. The two that I've got strike through here are the ones that we can't directly compare year on year. They weren't done in all 3 years. But 7 show that consistent pattern of an increase from 2012 to 2018 to 2023. And for 15 out of the 29, the highest count is in 2023. This one is a slight exception. The lookout, we did shift the survey point slightly just to better intercept people, and that was reflecting the car park design. So to some extent, this one's also perhaps not slightly so comparable, but just 3 locations where the lowest count was in 2023. So clearly some nuances and some variation between different bits of the SPA, and this data can go back to the ranger team and help inform where the biggest increases are and where to target ranger time. And on this plot, we've got the 2018 data on the x-axis and the 2023 data on the y-axis. So these are the counts of people entering. Each dot is a site. If the data were exactly the same, and the same in 2018 as 2023, we'd expect the dots to all lie on this dotted black line. You can see the majority are above, and the further they are from the black line moving this way, the bigger the increase. So we also conducted interviews, so that's directly asking questions of a sample of people. The data go onto tablets and then come straight onto our servers. In total, 1,118 interviews conducted. That's a brilliant sample, and there is a huge amount of information and data in there. I'm just going to give you a flavour. 79% of the interviewed groups had a dog with them. So that's a slight increase in the percentage since 2018. And 39% of those dogs were off lead at the time of the interview. The majority were on a short visit from home, as you'd expect, just 1% on holiday. And the main activity, and this is as given by the interviewee, so the question is, what is the main activity you're undertaking today? So 79% of interviewed groups had a dog with them, but 74% of them said they were here to walk their dog. So it's interesting that we get that response as the main activity. So people are saying they're not necessarily coming to see wildlife or bird watching or experiencing the scenery. Those are not the main activity being undertaken. For 3/4 of the people visiting the Heath, it's dog walking. And here we can see those activity responses as pie charts at all the different survey locations. So the brown is the dog walkers, and you can see those consistent across the whole of the SPA. The green wedge is walkers. That's the next biggest percentage. You can see a chunk of cyclists at the Bracknell survey points around the Lookout and Broadmoor. And there's a little bit of wildlife watching focused around Chobham Heath, for example, where the bluebird is. But overriding, you can see it's essentially dog walking and then jogging as the main activities at most locations. 7% of people were on their first visit, so that's the first time they've visited the location where interviewed. A third actually visit for more than 20 years, so some quite with a long depth of experience of visiting the sites. 76% visit all the year round, 68% visited at least once a week, and the typical visitor, we estimate, makes around 155 visits per year to the location where interviewed. And here you can see that data on the actual counts, the number of visits made per year. So those values in red are the highest, and at those locations, so Horsell Common, for example, 180 people, 180 visits made per year on average from the people interviewed, the typical number of visits per year. So these ones are visited a bit less frequently, the ones with the orange numbers. And finally, some of these locations, for example, at Brams Hill, 125 is the typical number of visits made by a visitor per year. And these data are quite useful because they provide implications as to how often visitors are on site, and that relates to also how easy they are to intercept and how much ranger time you need to get a good engagement. A bit more on visitor patterns. Most are arriving by car, most stay around an hour, and this is the duration of visit. So you can see dog walkers typically are visiting either less than 30 minutes or between 30 minutes and an hour. So the estimated visit duration for typical average visitors across all is 1 hour and 3 minutes. One of the questions is which alternative site you would visit. So the we ask for one alternative site, which one location could you have visited today if you couldn't have visited here? And then we also ask people to name 2 other sites. The size of the circle indicates the number of sites that were named at each interview location. And overall, 28% of the people interviewed named a sang as an alternative. 17% gave a sang as the one site that had visited instead that day if they couldn't have visited the interview location. And the most commonly named sangs were Farnham Park, Heather Farm and Horseshoe Lake. So on this map, the grey are other sites that aren't sang or aren't SPA, the dark red are SPA, and the orange are other sang sites. So the bigger the orange, the more people are naming sangs as the alternative sites that they'd have visited at that interview location. And you can see there is some variability around the SPA, which I think is quite useful and quite interesting. And so these ones in red, in the red circle, you can see that they're particularly visiting the SPA, and the sang and other sites is perhaps a bit lower. And in this area around Broadmoor, you've got a good proportion of people visiting the sang, and the same down in the south here. When we look to the west and some of the areas more, when you look to the west and some of the areas around Hazley Heath and Brams Hill, you can see that the other sites being visited are a bit higher. And I think one of the interesting things about this map and seeing this data spatially is that you can start to see a pattern of where there are more sangs and where there are sangs in close proximity to the SPA. Those seem to be working really well in terms of being named by the visitors that are actually coming to the SPA. We also collect data on visitor routes. We ask people with a map just to draw interactively. We draw a line on a paper map, and then this is subsequently digitized. So we got that data from 89% of the people interviewed, and the typical route length is 2.9 kilometers. Daily visitors tended to visit 2.7 kilometers, and those visiting on a short visit, 30 minutes, just 1.8 kilometers. And by activity, dog walkers 2.9 kilometers, up to mountain biking and cycling, their typical route length is 7.3 kilometers. And you can see these data spatially on the map here. So even though we've got a snapshot of locations that we've done the surveys across the SPA, you can see that kind of coverage across the SPA as a whole. The very faint grey hatching is indicating areas that aren't usually open to the public. And the darker the blue lines here, the higher the level of footfall, the more routes we have mapped. We can transfer that kind of data to a grid, and the grid shading here is reflecting the intensity of footfall from our survey locations. And it's quite interesting to compare individual sites. So for example, for Sandhurst to Alsmore, virtually all of the site has got footfall over it using our grids. And Ockham and Wisley, there's some areas just from our 2 survey points where people are certainly not reaching. So some quieter areas. Awareness, 22% had heard of the Thames Basin Heath Partnership, 10% of interviewees had heard of Heathland Hounds. And for those with dogs, 24% had heard of the partnership and 12% Heathland Hounds. So a slight nudge that the dog walkers are slightly better informed than some of the other visitors. The postcode data indicates where people are coming from, the draw of the site. We got data for 98% of interviewees, and we calculate the linear distance as the crow flies between the survey point and the postcode. So that median distance is 2.4, and the Q3, the 75th percentile, is 4.6 kilometers. And it was that Q3 distance in the original survey that was broadly used to set the 5 kilometers. And it's a good check to see that it's not really changed too much, and the 5 kilometers is still very much appropriate. And there's that postcode data with the 5K buffer. The coloured dots reflect those on a day trip short visit directly from home, and then the other colours are those that have travelled or are staying with friends and family or on holiday, and clearly those people are likely to have come from further afield. Finally, Mark mentioned a number of other strategic solutions across the country in terms of dealing with recreation mitigation. And it's interesting to compare the Thames Basin Heath to those sites. We've undertaken survey work at all of those ones listed. The data are comparable in terms of the approach and the methodology. And I'd just highlight three figures there. The red, 74%, the percentage of dog walkers on the Thames Basin Heath is particularly high. They seem to have a unique draw for local dog walkers, and I think that highlights the need and the importance of SANGs. Very low percentage for cyclists compared to some other sites, with Cannock Chase and Brackland, both sites with sort of dedicated mountain bike facilities. Up to a fifth of visitors there at those locations are visiting to cycle. And the postcode data, it reflects a relatively small draw. That 4.6 kilometres Q3 distance indicates a zone of influence that's perhaps smaller than some of the other sites. And I think that reflects the kind of activities taking place in the local geography. So I've given you a lightning tour. There's a lot more information in the report. It's a bit more technical. Hopefully that just gives you some of the headline figures, but there's evidence that numbers are increasing. The Thames Basin Heaths are very, very busy sites. They are some of the busiest heathlands in the country. Dog walking is by far the main activity, and I think should be a focus for the mitigation. And as more and more data are collected relating to SANGs and the network of SANGs, that now those 80 sites becoming established, we've got growing evidence for their effectiveness. And the data provide useful material and can help target engagement and range of focus. And at that point, I'll stop sharing my screen and come back to the group.
Well, thank you. I certainly can't be accused of not being thorough in that report. If I perhaps can open up to questions and comments, please. No, in that. Oh, Sean.
I was trying not to go first. Sorry, Guy. Listen, thanks ever so much. Really good to see that data is being converted into insights. So thank you for that. One of the things that struck me when you were talking about the usage of the SANGs across the different areas of the SPA was whether the bigger SANGs were actually in the areas that are being used more. And therefore whether that presented a particular opportunity or challenge for us to try and find bigger SANGs in the areas which are not being used as much. And I'll just give you an example. I'm one of the 1%, by the way, the cyclists, not the dog walkers. But if I was to go around Chobham, whatever it is, Chobham Watermeadows SANG, it would take me about half an hour, and you've said the average is 1 hour and 3 minutes. So if I was a dog walker, I wouldn't be bothered with that, to be honest, because it's not big enough. Hence my comment: have we got big enough SANGs in the right places?
Good point and good questions, and the data can start to inform that. And I'm not going to try and answer it in terms of, I can provide some insights. For 2.9, for that kind of route length, you need something around 40 hectares if it's a square and you're going around the perimeter. So clearly there is a role for large SANGs. There is visitor data that's comparable from the SANGs that I'm not presenting on today. You can see from the map the locations of the SANGs and where the gaps are. And I think starting to identify, with those pie charts that we've shown where people are not tending to name SANGs, it's providing the opportunities to identify gaps and identify gaps for the types of activity. And as the SANG network grows, I think that's one of the obvious things to start looking at is how different SANGs can provide and cater for the range of use.
Thank you. Marissa.
Yeah, just flagging. I mean, the dog walking stuff. We know we've had an increase in dogs, sort of 12.5 million dogs now. I don't think the impact can be measured, basically. So I run a group called the Canine and Feline Sector Group, which advises government on all things dogs and cats. And I'm a very pro dog cat person, but the impact is huge. And actually the National Trust is undertaking a really deep dive survey at the moment, a piece of work on the impact of dogs on biodiversity, and cats for that matter, on biodiversity. And they're saying the findings are going to be really, really significant. That kind of ties us into bigger pieces of work we're doing on nature recovery, these sorts of things which have to be factored in. And I think we are going to find that a lot of our nature recovery work is quite impacted by pet ownership. And that's something we're going to have to think about around wider kind of use of land more broadly and where we want people to go. But then alongside that, you've also got other things happening. So there's been a lot of professionalisation of pet activities. By that, I mean dog walking, dog grooming, all of those sorts of things. Dog walking is particularly interesting because organisations like the Crown Estate are bringing in quite heavy licensing now. So it's got fees set on it in order to be able to sort of undertake dog walking activities on their land. And this is all going to move people around and put them into different areas. So I think that whole conversation around SANGs and the different use, and dog walkers in particular, is a particularly interesting one relating to all of those issues. And one we have to get right if we want to protect our countryside, basically. We can't have people just sort of traipsing all over it. And I know that undermines the principle of public land. This countryside belongs to everyone, but it's trying to do a myriad different things now, and we've got to factor that in. So I think that conversation, we talk about dog walkers at every meeting, don't we? The issues related to them, whether it's poo bags hanging off trees, to kind of the disturbance of ground nesting birds and things, to also the fact that dog walking is great for public health and mental health, all of those sorts of things. So I think that kind of thinking around SANGs is really important, and where we want dog walkers to go and whether we can draw them to those kind of sites so that it's safe, manageable, dog poo bins, etc., about disturbing nature. So I just think it's one that's got to remain on our radar all the time, basically. Dog ownership isn't going away. Dog ownership's great, but it is problematic for nature. So just worth sort of, you already know it, don't you? But just flagging it again, because I think it's something we're really interested in at Surrey and would be keen to sort of work on that.
Yeah, and if I may, I would certainly like to second what Councillor Heath has just said. For those who are new members, we're always striving for a balance when it comes to the SPA. At the same time as we want people to enjoy the Heathlands as a fantastic natural space to enjoy, if it was overwhelmed with thousands upon thousands of people, then it would destroy the very thing that we're trying to protect. And as Councillor Heath has just said, the birds that we're trying to protect in the SPA are particularly affected by dogs. So I know Ruth will touch on in her report fantastic initiatives like Heathland Hounds, and I forget what's the latest one, Ruth. Is it Waggy Walks or something like that? But
exactly
there are
that,
some.
Yes.
Yeah, fabulous. I remembered correctly. So I know Ruth will touch on that as well. But for everyone who's new to this board, it is an ongoing problem. How do we balance those two competing pressures, and how do we deal with the issues of dogs? Because we certainly don't want to push them away, but we do need to make sure people understand the impact that they can have. Any other questions or comments? No, in that case, thank you very much for your report. We move on to the next agenda item, which is, well, funny enough, over to Ruth. So this is the SAM update, and I'll let Ruth fire away.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed, Guy. I shall start and share my screen, she says glibly. So could you just let me know if you can see that okay, and is it in the right sort of setting?
Fine, Ruth.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very, very much. Okay. Well, I had thought that I might start with some introductions, but we've already done that bit, so so I don't need to. But thank you very much to Mark and Derwin for your very interesting presentations. That's a really lovely summary of the situation. And our plan is to have those recordings on the TBH website, so they will be available for us to refer back to in future should we need to. So I'm Ruth. Thank you very much for your attention today. And we've got Victoria and Zoe are going to be co-presenting with me because if I talk for half an hour, I think my head might fall off. So they're going to help me out with it. In Darren's presentation, we saw a lot of maps, and I love a map. So here's another map of our SPA. And I like the fact that in this map, you can see how dispersed the special protection areas. So obviously we operate across the 3 counties, Hampshire, Berkshire and Surrey, and the fact that there is quite a lot of travel from one site to another site, of course, is part of the challenge to wardening across such a dispersed area. But the fact that the landscape itself has been here for 10,000 years, it's actually a human-made landscape, and it's been here for such a long time, and we have such rare species and very specialist adapted species that are living here, which is why we have to look after it. We've talked a little bit already about these rare ground nesting birds, which, as we know, are the reason why the SPA was classified back in 2005. And here you can see 2 nightjar chicks in their nest. I mean, we say nest, it's kind of a collection of twigs, really, but they're sitting there on the ground. You can see how well camouflaged they are, but they are right on the ground, and sometimes they nest right near the path. So this is some of the challenges that we're trying to help people to understand. Another map for you. This is a map of the SPA with all of your local authorities shown on it, and with the buffer zone shown. So that's the 5 kilometre zone where all of the strategic mitigation solution that has been developed with your local authorities and Natural England, that is the framework that we're delivering. As Mark was saying, the strategy itself is twofold. We've got the SANG, of course, which aims to divert visitors from the SPA and is delivered by developers to agreed guidelines. We can talk about SANG for hours. It's very, very interesting. But what you've asked us to do here today is come and talk to you about SAM, because that's the part of the framework that you've asked us to deliver. As we've touched on already, there's a tariff that's applied to all new residential developments within that buffer zone, that blue dotted line that was on the previous map. Hampshire County Council receive all the funds and monitor the payments. And big thanks to Hampshire for doing that. Great job. And the intention is, sorry, it's me wiggling my mouse too much. And the intention is that the SAM project will be funded to perpetuity. This slide just gives us a lovely representation of the breadth of the partnership. So lots and lots of local authorities and different partnerships involved. We often refer to this group as the Access Management and Monitoring Partnership, or AMP. We host a meeting for the partnership once a quarter, and we theme the meetings to meet the needs of the partners and the partnership. So if there's anything anybody wants to particularly talk about, we do have this once a quarter meeting in the diary already. This is our team structure. So the photo that you can see there is a green-eyed bee that one of our wardens took a photo of on the heathland. That's another example of very rare, wonderful creatures that live on the heath. But thank you to the board who were here last year, who agreed that we could have a structure change, because we used to have fewer year-round wardens and more seasonal wardens, and you very kindly agreed that we could have more year-round wardens and fewer seasonal wardens. And the biggest impact on that change, well, we'll talk about that a little bit shortly. And Victoria and Zoe will give you some more details. We do still have a data analyst vacancy, and I do want to say thank you very much to Footprint Ecology for all the wonderful analysis work they've been doing for us. They have done we do a SANG visitor survey. The wardens go and do the survey work, and we've just got that report. I've got a draft of it sitting beside me, and so that will be available once that's completed. But in the meantime, I'm working on various ideas of how I can recruit a data analyst, and I don't have anything concrete to propose yet, but I'll have something for you in December, and I'm wondering about having that position hosted by a partner organisation, but I'll let you know how things go there. I like this slide. You've all probably seen it before, but this is our SAM team plan. So when we wanted to focus on what do we actually do. So we focus all of our efforts on delivering this fantastic strategy developed by your local authorities in conjunction with Natural England. We captured that in the team plan you can see here. So what we would like to see is everyone, absolutely everyone, we thought we're doing big, in Surrey, Hampshire and Berkshire to connect, respect and protect their heathland. We will enable this using education, engagement and monitoring to deliver our three key messages, which are simply, please keep to the path, please be wildfire aware, and please be aware of the green spaces on your doorstep, which is how we refer to SANG. And that's all we're asking folks to do. When it comes to operationally, we spend the summer delivering these messages, and then our winter period is actually just October to January, but we spend the time looking at how the summer went, what went well, what we can improve on, and working on our plan for the next year in order to try all the time to be as efficient and effective as we can be. We've developed lovely signage to convey the please stick on the path message, because it is so important. You can see those little fluffy nightjar chicks. It's really important we stay on the path. The signage has been adopted by all of the land management partners, and we're really keen to present a unified message, as this really aids understanding and promotes responsible behaviour amongst members of the public. Here you can see some of the team putting up their signs. We've talked a lot about SANGs already, but our booklet about the green spaces on your doorstep is our most popular hard offering. The new edition of our green spaces on your doorstep booklet rolled off the printing presses in November. It's an A5 booklet that has a physical map, I love a map, in the centre of it with all the SANGs marked. Oh, sorry, that's my fault again. Mouse in the wrong place. Trying to scroll through my notes, sorry about that. It's got map in the centre with all of the SANG marked on it. The last edition we had 62 SANG, and this one has actually got 82 SANG in the physical booklet. The green space on your doorstep part of our website has a live listing of all the SANGs available that has a postcode finder. So all you have to do is pop in your postcode and it will tell you which of the SANG is nearest to you, so you can go and have a visit. And there you are, spoiler before, but that's the map that's in the centre of the booklet with all of the SANG on it. And you can see the distribution of where they are across our patch. And we've talked quite a lot about dog ownership, and quite rightly too. So I've just going to briefly mention Heathland Hounds here, then I'll circle back to it again in a little while. But we have a very active Facebook group focused on engaging with dog owners. As Derwent was saying, the SPA survey lets us know that at the moment we have 79% of the SPA visitors are dog owners. So that's a really big audience. Heathland Hound has 1,735 members, and this is another one of my favourite slides, because nearly every time I'm using it, the numbers increase. So this was the membership on the 8th of July this year. We use different branding for Heathland Hound messaging because it's easier to engage with a dog owner if you've got a picture of a smiley dog on your uniform, and we find that goes down really nicely. And our main message is #pause on paths please from Heathland Hounds. And here you can see the whole team sitting during our induction week before we went out in the Heathlands. And you can see Mandy and Joe there in the middle in their Heathland Hounds uniforms because they focus on Heathland Hounds. Now, my next slide, I was going to go on to wardening news, but I am aware I've made a bit of a faux pas because I fear at the start I should have introduced Stephen Rudd, who is also here to give you a little bit of a talk about the project. Stephen, should we talk to you at the end, or would you like to come in now? I do apologise. Okay, we'll come back to you at the end then. We'll crack on. Okie dokie. So, with wardening news, I'm going to hand you over to Victoria.
Yep, so here is an update of what we've been doing since we last spoke to you in December. So next slide, please. So thank you again for agreeing our structure change of more year-round wardens and fewer seasonals. So in terms of the year-round, we're pleased to announce that former seasonal warden Mandy Griffith has been successful in achieving this year-round warden role. And she specifically focused on the Heath and Hounds aspect of the project and works closely with Jo Wilshire. So she was in the previous slide in the blue uniform. And in terms of seasonal wardens, we're pleased that Steve Fry has joined us for a second year as a seasonal warden, and also Joe and Richard have also joined us as new seasonals this year. So next slide, please. So the biggest impact in terms of having fewer seasonals and more year-round wardens, one of the biggest impacts is that we were all able to get out on the 1st of March for the first time of the history in the project. So the 1st of March is the bird nesting season, and we were able to streamline the induction process so that we were all out on the 1st of March. So in terms of the pictures there, so Zoe and Joe did a pop-up at Lightwater and put up signs at Turf Hill. This was all on the 1st of March. Richard and Sarah ran a woodlark themed pop-up at Butlers Forest. Mandy, Joe and Steve ran a Heath and Hound pop-up at Caesar's Camp, and Kay and myself put up signs at Hazley Heath. Next slide, please. So I'll hand you over to Zoe to talk about events and Heath Week, which is our busiest time of year, Heath Week.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool. So in May this year, we got involved with National Nature Reserves Week, the ambition of which is to connect people with nature and boost inclusivity. It was a great opportunity to bolster our visibility as the events were advertised on a website that reaches a national audience. We chose to focus on Chobham Common, being the largest NNR in the southeast and one of only 2 NNRs in the SPA area. Chobham Common Preservations Committee led a history walk, which you can see in this photo. Seasonal Warden Steve led a Chobham Film and TV history walk and a Celebrating Chobham Common event with the help of Nikki. And Warden Sonia also held a sensory scavenger hunt at Yateley Common to improve our offer during the half term. Over the week, we spoke to 106 people at the events alone. Next slide, please. So we filled Easter break with lots of events covering all 3 counties and spoke to almost 500 people, mostly for the first time. The second ever Wildfire Awareness Week took place, organised by Surrey Fire and Rescue Service with our help. There was an event at Horsell Common, Ash Ranges and the Royal Berkshire Fire and Rescue Service took part with an event at Wildmoor too. They were all extremely well attended by local crews. And we held a couple of Spring into Nature events and had over 100 engagements at those. Wildfire awareness is still very important, even with this rubbish weather we've had. We haven't had any major fires this year, touch wood, but we have had quite a series of small campfires and barbecues. So lots of close calls at Yateley, Hazley, Horsell just this week, 2 in one night, and Chobham Common. Next slide. One of our strategic aims this year was to boost our guided walks in ground nesting bird season outside of Heath Week, especially nightjar walks, as these are really impactful and memorable for the public. So during May and June, we ran 11 guided walks. Warden Kay led 4 nightjar walks and a dawn chorus walk on Brams Hill, the forestry site. I led 2 nightjar walks, one at Horsell and one at West End, and a dawn chorus walk at Horsell. And Sarah, Michael, Nikki and Victoria also led nightjar walks for lots of different types of groups, Rambler groups, a society, a group of teachers, and a Hampshire ornithological society called the Ladybirders, which I like that name. If you know any groups that might be interested in any type of guided walk on the Heath, do let us know. The walks have limited spaces to minimise disturbance, and we often suffer from no-shows. However, we still reached a total of 119 people and received a flurry of positive feedback on social media and our private feedback surveys. Next slide. We've increased our themed pop-ups this year. We've done herptile and invertebrate pop-ups. After a fire, we aim to hold a wildfire awareness pop-up close to the burn site. We've done so on Yateley and have one planned on Horsell as well. We're helping people connect with nature by tailoring activities to individual sang, all the while promoting their use. For example, Mike's Tremendous Tree Walk at Lily Hill Park, which happened for the 2nd year running, and a family nature day during Great Big Green Week. This included a guided walk to showcase the transformation of Rook's Nest Wood from former agricultural grazing land to thriving nature reserve. And it was a brief trip through 10,000 years of our relationship to the land, using Rook's Nest Wood as the teacher. Moving on to Heath Week. So it's pretty much all planned now. And very well prepared for next week. We feel it's the most organised we've ever been, and we've had events booked in since December 2023. So we've got about 24 events, including some new ideas. For example, The Secrets of the Common, which was inspired by The Secrets of the Heath, where actors will be displaying what life was like during the Iron and Bronze Ages. That's over at Blackbush Airport. So lots of partner involvement this year as well, with the Surrey and Royal Berkshire Fire and Rescue Services, Hampshire County Council, Hart DC, Forestry England, Thursley NNR team are also doing an event on their site. Yateley Society, Chobham Common Preservations Committee, Amphibian and Reptile Conservation Trust, Hampshire and Isle of Wight, Amphibian and Reptile Group, and Guildford Borough Council as well. And Ruth or Victoria are going to post a link to our website in the chat. So if you want to have a look at our Heath Week events and see if you can come down, or let anyone know that might be interested, that'd be great.
Yeah. Guy Gilby has already done that, so thank you very much.
Oh, lovely, thank you.
Thank you.
On to the next slide, this is a section of our Heath Week planner, which is our one-stop shop for everything Heath Week. There's about 30 columns of information, including land manager, contact details, all the equipment needed for each event, whether the risk assessment's been filed, and it also serves as a place to collate positive and developmental feedback. Our comms team use this to withdraw information to advertise on our website. And we've also shared this at the mitigation meetup, and several organisations wanted a copy, which is good that it's useful. Handing over to Victoria now for comms.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about our amazing comms team. So that's Nikki and Sarah. They both work part-time, but they get a lot done. So all of the beautiful graphics that you see are created by them. So we have just taken delivery of a brand new gazebo awning. So that's the picture on the slide. It's a slightly lighter model, so it's easier to carry to site. And there's 4 interchangeable back panels, and it can be used with just the canopy as well. So it's very colourful. We're very noticeable on the heathland. So our What's On calendar of events has been busier than ever this spring, and it keeps the communications team very busy, creating publicity materials and posting on social media. So typically these events are very well attended, with most people finding out about them by Facebook. So that's about 40% of the total 2024 bookings, and then also through word of mouth. So that's about 20% of the 2024 bookings. And there's a story aimed at school-aged children and written by professional storyteller Steve Markwell, and that's almost complete. So it features a mythical heathland landscape populated with colourful characters. So the wildlife and the people who love the heathland take centre stage in this story, and the initial publication will be via our website with a view to trialling it in schools and public readings. So watch this space. So next slide, please. So this is a new addition to the green space on your doorstep since the last report. So this is Blandford Woods, and it was opened in early June 2024, so this year. So it's hot off the press. It's a beautiful woodland, and it's managed by the Blackwater Valley Countryside Partnership on behalf of the Land Trust. And it directly links with the adjacent Wellesley Woodland Sang as well. So do get out there if you possibly can. So this slide shows the stats on Facebook, and the start of the ground nesting bird season saw a big peak in our Facebook reach. So you can see that spike there at the beginning, where people do go on Facebook more because of the bird nesting season. The graph shows the period range of the 29th of February to the 29th of March this year. So this is our social media and website reach, October 23 to May 24. So we continue to use social media platforms to spread our key messages and engage people with what's happening on local heathland. So we're on Facebook, so that's the blue line there on the graph, and that's the most popular at the moment. X, which was formerly Twitter, that's the orange line, and also Instagram, so that's the grey line at the bottom. So we provide a wide variety of content to appeal to many different audiences, and we cover many topics including the wildlife of the heaths, our key messages, the work of the wardens, event publicity and sang promotion as well. Social media statistics as of May 24 show our following is gradually increasing as we become more well known. So a couple of stats here. So in the period, the 1st of December 2023 to the 31st of May 24, over 26,000 users visited the website, and this is compared to only just over 21,000 in the same period, 22 to 2023. So there have been over 63,000 page views across the whole website, December 2023 to May 2024, compared to just over 42,000 page views in the same period, 2022 to 2023. So this shows that engagement is actually becoming higher with our website and social media. And engagement is, as I said before, is at its highest during March, when we've got the bird nesting season, and then again April and May when we're reminding people to keep to paths, and then this rises again in July now when we're advertising our most busy time of year, which is Heath Week. So this shows, this is an example of a recent high-performing post. So this reached over 6,000 accounts on Facebook, and it's about Southwood Country Park. And if you haven't been there, it has an absolutely fantastic cafe. But I'll now hand you over to Ruth to talk about our amazing heathlands and heathland education. And I believe there's a question in the chat about this.
Oh, right. Okie dokie. Shall I answer the question?
Well, this might answer the question, this section.
Righty-ho, let's find out. Okay, so we have an amazing education officer, Michael, and he continues to spread the word about our amazing heathlands and how everyone can help to look after them. This year, he's been delivering heathland-focused assemblies in class sessions and curriculum-linked adventures on the heaths. He has also been encouraging Year 6 children to be wildfire aware at Junior Citizen in Surrey and Think Safe in Hampshire, and that's new for us this year. The Think Safe in Hampshire, we were doing Junior Citizen before. He has also been speaking to local students about careers in conservation and pointing at hoverflies in the name of wellbeing. We've done lots of sessions and lots of engagements with word continuing to spread and new schools joining in. As of the 18th of July this year, Michael's done 6,241 engagements over 153 sessions, which is amazing. As an example of some of the work Michael has been doing with schools, he's been working with the Year 6 environmental ambassadors at New Scotland Hill School in Little Sandhurst. Together, they created a Heathland assembly and co-delivered it to the whole school. They then set a competition to design a Help the Heath poster and had over 100 entries. The winners were announced at the school's Outdoor Learning Day recently. There were 8 winners, 1 in each year group. Posters will be put up in the nearby heathland to encourage people to behave responsibly and to help our ground nesting birds. That's a great effort. Feedback from the head teacher was that many thanks again. Brilliant to see the children's efforts and really appreciate your dedication and commitment to making this happen for them. And here's some lovely feedback from a Year 4 student in Ash. And the impact of the sessions goes beyond the children. This is the teacher giving us feedback too. Did that answer the question about education?
So the question about education is who is best to contact to aim any inquiries to, please? So we can put Michael's email in the chat.
Yeah.
Yes. Okie dokie.
Yeah, I was just going to say, anyone who wants, who knows a school, we do try to proactively reach out to schools. And it's not for one to try, but if they do know schools they think that would be good to engage, then please do drop Michael a line.
Absolutely, thank you very much. So I promised to tell you a little bit more about Heath and Hounds earlier in the presentation, so here we go. As I mentioned before, we've had 1,735 Heath and Hound members, and each one of those has signed up to the Good Dog Guide, which I'll tell you about in the next slide. We're also running an initiative called the Heathland Heroes, with the aim of photographing well-behaved dogs met on the SPA between mid-May and mid-September, and showcasing within the group and the TBH social media platforms that Victoria was talking to you about. I was thinking we might try and put a link to the Heathland Hounds part of the website in the chat. I don't know if we're able to do that.
Yeah, Victoria's well ahead of you.
Hey, there we go. Excellent. We have regular branded pop-ups that have been run, including the first at Brentmore Heath this year. We have group waggy walks where the Mandy and Joe go out with Heathland Hound members and showcase best practice of walking with your dog on the paths. And they've continued twice monthly, including at the newly opened Blandford Woods we mentioned earlier, where the Land Trust staff joined Joe and Mandy. Heathland Hounds contributed to Wildfire Awareness Week and supported partner events such as the Crown Estates Sharing the Space event at Windsor Great Park and Hart District Council's Bark in the Park event at Edenbrook Country Park. So this is a little snapshot of the Good Dog Guide, because Heath and Hounds really focus on promoting responsible dog walking on the SPA. And we encourage the owners to keep the dogs on the path, preventing them from chasing the livestock, following the signage, and so on. We've mentioned those waggy walks there, and Joe and Mandy run twice monthly waggy walks across the 3 counties, introducing group members to the sang. As we know, the sangs were designed with the dog walkers in mind, and we encourage everybody to use them. Joe and Mandy run regular Heath and Hound pop-ups across all 3 counties in all weathers. We're hoping that the new gazebo that we mentioned earlier is going to be a huge success. And when it is, we're going to work on getting a Heath and Hound branded one too. And I'm going to hand over to Zoe now to talk to you a bit about monitoring.
Cool. So just to give you an overview of the monitoring we have in hand at the moment, Footprint Ecology have finished analysing our summer and winter sang surveys. So we just got that this week, and that should be going up on the website soon. And the SPA visitor survey has been completed and is on our website. The bird numbers for 2023 are on the next slide, and the 2024 breeding bird survey is now underway. The 2025 British Trust for Ornithology will be conducting a national bird survey next year. The people counters, Tim and Mike have just finished the 3rd round of collection this year. And of course, our warden logs, which we complete during every visit to the SPA and review on a monthly basis to ensure our wardening time is being spent correctly. It's also how we gather the information you've seen in the report. 2023 was a good year for nightjar, with an estimated number of 405 territories. This is an increase of 9.5% on the total from 2022, and close to the record high of 413 in 2021. The fall in numbers during 2022 was attributed to a major heathland fire at Ashley Ranges, but at least 15 of those lost territories were reoccupied in 2023. Dartford warbler numbers fell to their lowest level since 2018, when the population was hit by the bad weather during March, known as the Beast from the East. Dartford warbler are very weather dependent, and the short spells of very cold weather during the 2023 winter are likely to account for the latest fall. Woodlark numbers have also decreased, and while this result is disappointing, numbers remain above the 2018 to 2022 average. And the decline is almost certainly due to habitat availability, as woodlark are very dependent on areas of low vegetation or bare ground. Ongoing management of heathland habitats to clear scrub and keep them in optimal condition is vital. And all three species are doing well when compared to the baseline. So this figure shows the average number of interactions per hour during the sensitive period of March to August between 2017 and June 2024. This includes interactions on the SPA and locations like schools. So last July was the highest average interactions on record with 5.5 per hour. This March, we had our second highest at the time with an average of 3.91 interactions per hour. Then in June, we had a new second highest result of 4.4 interactions per hour. And who knows what July and August might bring. April this year was also the second highest result for that month with 2.8. In May, interactions were lower. But if you remember, the weather was not great, and we suspect the rainy weather conditions reduced the number of visitors, as we recorded almost 600 fewer interactions than in 2023. That was 1,444 in 2024 compared to 2020 in last year, over a similar number of hours. So literally 9 hours difference and 600 fewer interactions. This shows the commitment of our wardens to be out on site despite the weather. This season, our wardening hours are comparable to last year. The first half of the 2024 sensitive period, which is March to May, saw a total of 1,469 hours wardened. And last year was 8 hours fewer, so almost identical. The average people already spoken to was 27.3% from March to May, a slight increase from 25.5% people already aware last year. So slightly better, even though we have a smaller wardening team due to our restructure. There was a possibility this could alter our effectiveness, but these stats are reassuring that we made the right decision. And even though we are fewer people, the hours spent wardening, the project awareness, and the numbers of interactions haven't taken a dive. They're on par, if not better in some aspects.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Zoe. And this is my last slide, I promise, and I can let you go. But I've asked you to save the date. Liz, we were talking a bit about a dashboard, perhaps, and I suggested that there might be an opportunity for us to get together to do that. And so we would like the board to come and join us for a day at Heather Farm on Tuesday, the 3rd of September. I'll send the invite out after this meeting when it's all fresh in your mind. And we're thinking you could meet the team and see a little bit more about what we do. This is just like a whistle-stop tour of 6 months' work from 16 dedicated individuals. So there's lots more that we could tell you about. And we would like you to help us with our plans for the next steps for the project. We could take you out onto the Sang at Heather Farm, have a nice lunch and visit the SPA. In this slide, I've included a photo of the strategy day we had earlier this year with partners focusing on engaging with dog owners. It was a really useful day for us and our partners. And I know that Surrey County Council, who now have their commercial dog walker charter in place, I think have said they found it very useful too. So please do come and help us and have a really useful day on September the 3rd and have lots of good ideas of what we can be doing next. And everybody else, could you please come and say hello to us during Heath Week? Don't forget those amazing events we've got in the diary. And that's the end of our presentation. Thank you all very much.
Incredible. Thank you to Ruth, Victoria and Zoe. If I can just say a few comments before opening up to questions. I think you can all agree, for those of you who are new members here, that the enthusiasm really comes across. And if I may embarrass her, Ruth is clearly an example of that, and it's always a pleasure, Ruth, reading your reports, because I think your joy for this, your raw joy for this project really comes across. So really, thank you, Victoria, Zoe and Ruth. If I could just make a few comments. First of all, I'd like to say that I think Michael's work as the education officer really came out in that report. And whilst I don't want to single out any member of staff, because I think all of the staff do a fantastic job, would you mind, Ruth, on the board's behalf, please passing along our appreciation, because he seems to have had a really successful year this time round. And personally, I'm really excited. I know this sounds sad, but I'm really excited for this story that's going to come out. I know it's aimed at kids, but I'm still going to read it because it sounds quite exciting. So that's great. One quick question for me, otherwise I will forget it. I think this will be for you, Victoria. Obviously, there was a drop in the Twitter reach. Any particular theory as to why that was, or is there perhaps just a general drop in Twitter engagement anyway, across the board?
Yes, I think it might be just generally. I think there might have been a change when it moved over from Twitter to X. I think there was a little bit of a drop then overall. That's as far as I know. I don't know if Zoe or Ruth, you have any additional comments to make about that.
No, I think at the time when we looked at it, we thought, oh gosh, what's happening there? And it was similar to the sorts of general drop-off there was in activity on Twitter at the time when it changed over to X. And you can also see from the stats there that we're getting better at Instagram, but it's work to be done there as well.
Just perhaps as a clarifier, maybe this might be a question for Stephen. Stephen, did you hear of similar drops in trends in other projects at all? Just trying to get an idea if this is definitely a national thing, or if perhaps there's something that we're missing.
It's not something. Were you referring that to me? Sorry, Guy.
I just whether you've heard anything from other projects.
Yeah,
had
no,
similar drops.
I haven't, no, and we don't have a huge presence on other projects through social media, but we do have people that do look at that. So I mean, we can go and have a look as a team to see what there was, but I don't have anything information for you now. Sorry.
If that's okay, Stephen, that'd be much appreciated. Apologies, everyone. I've monopolised this for too long. I will start with questions. So, Jonathan, you have the pleasure of the first question. Or comment.
Thank you, Guy. And can I thank all the speakers on the SAM project partnership, the strategic partnership project update, and the enthusiasm that you mentioned, Guy, is quite palpable. Palpable is what I'm trying to say, from both Ruth and Zoe. And when I read the report, I just said, I'm really looking forward to this because it's basically all good news. I have two questions. Okay, the first one is where you say the RSPB SPA land at Blackbush that we've been asked to help out. Do we get paid for that by the RSPB?
No, just as part of because the area is within the SPA, and we want to be wardening as broadly across the SPA as we possibly can. The previous ownership of Blackbush weren't that keen on us wardening, and that's fine. You know, we don't want to step on anybody's toes. But now that the RSPB are responsible for the management, they've invited us to come and warden because they've seen our effectivity elsewhere. So that does mean we've got a bit of a new audience there at Blackbush. Have I described that properly, do you think, Victoria and Zoe? Would you add anything to that? So there's no, the only difference is really that the land managers won't want us to access the space to be able to warden.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So I presume it's quid pro quo. When we want their help, they'll give it to us free.
They are very, very helpful whenever they can be, yes.
Okay. That's good news. Now, I don't want any of our officers being pinched, okay?
We try and make it much nicer to work for us, although it's very nice to work for them too, I'm sure.
Yes, yes, I'm sure. Okay. The second one is interesting because I read with interest the nightjar, Dartford warbler, and woodlark figures that were all mentioned. Okay. It's I understand the Dartford warbler issue because of the beast from the east, so I won't talk about that. But under the woodlark, which you said it was disappointing, which we all are. It's disappointing when the figures go down. It's due to habitat availability. Now, should this become a focus of our attention, is my question, for the woodlark?
That is a very good question, and I think it's something that we have discussed it with the AMP meetings that I mentioned before, and it might all be something that we need to give a bit more focus, a bit more support on, so that we don't see the start of a trend here. We could ask that question of the 2Js and AMP and see what the response is. I think it's probably the most sensible thing. Does that seem like a good idea?
I think it should be I think it needs to be an action, is what I'm saying. So
right.
Rather than just say note the report, I think with the permission of the committee here, I think this should be an action to do something about improving the habitat availability for the woodlark.
We shall.
Does everybody agree with that? Chairman, you better do your job here.
I suspect you won't find much disagreement unless anyone wants to chime in with a elaboration or dissent. No, in that case, Ruth, maybe for our next chairs up. Oh, sorry, Miranda.
Apologies, Chair. Could I just come in on that point just briefly from a kind of regulatory perspective and what the aim of this group is, and obviously where the funding comes from, because this group is, and the SAM work is funded by the developers. So it's to do with mitigating impacts of new housing developments. And so straying into the territory of landowners and how they manage their land who are not developers could be challenging in terms of kind of using this forum for those works. It's perhaps slightly out of the remit of this group. So just to flag that from a perspective of kind of the planning and the regulations behind the works that go on in terms of the SANG and the SAM.
Well, if I may suggest, let's interpret Jonathan's suggestion as a suggestion, and that perhaps it's okay for us to pass along suggestions. So perhaps, Ruth, as a suggestion, maybe if we cover this as part of our chair's updates, that might be quite useful. But thank you for the clarification, Miranda.
Yes, thank you.
That was very interesting. Now, don't forget, this whole thing started from a European directive. Now, I know we are basically still European, but we're not in Europe, the European Commission. But it was a directive and we had to answer it. And the reason that we came into existence was to protect the ground nesting birds. That was the reason for coming in. The rest of the stuff that we're doing magnificently, and education, et cetera, is actually a byproduct of all this. It's great that we're bringing in young people, schools, etc., to look at what we're doing. But this has always been the focus, to protect these 3 ground nesting birds. So I don't know about the technicalities with the planning, etc., but I think we need to, as the chairman has said, the organizations involved here, like including ourselves, need to ensure that the areas of low vegetation are there for the woodlark in some form or other. I don't know how we do it, but we need to be, if we're not doing it ourselves, we're telling someone else that they ought to do it. Thank you.
I think perhaps if I can just come in very quickly on this. Interestingly, by pure coincidence, I'd actually read the original 2009 design, the delivery framework, that's what it was called, the 2009 delivery framework. And it did occur to me that one thing it does says is that the remit of the board should be periodically reviewed. I'm not entirely sure when the last time was that happened, but perhaps, Jonathan, it's apt that you raise this now, because there might be little alterations that we can do to the framework that clarifies the remit of the board. Because whilst I entirely agree with Miranda, the technical basis for this board is still, from a planning perspective, quite clearly the day-to-day work has moved on from the planning necessarily, because as the years go on, there'll be less planning that goes on outside of the border of the SBA and more towards the day-to-day environmental work. But that's a longer term discussion, but I will pick that up, Jonathan, in between the committees and perhaps report back at the next meeting. So
that's very helpful. Thank you.
No worries.
I'm conscious that there were questions in the chat, and I've unfortunately missed them, and I really should have done them first. So, Adam, if you're entirely okay with this, I will ask Sean to go next, because he did have the 2 questions. So, Sean, if you want to confirm that the first question was answered, and if you want to ask the second question,
they were both answered. Thank you. So my next point is completely different. So please,
in that case, then, Adam, you go first.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, before I was asked the question, I was going to ask. I just want to lend my support to what Councillor Glenn was saying. I think, and I think perhaps, while it might be difficult to perhaps, sort of word an amendment, ad hoc on this, I think it is important that we do recognise that when the data or the experiences are showing a particular trend and a particular risk, we're here to, overall this board's here to oversee the strategic, management and monitoring. And if the monitoring is showing a worrying trend, or a trend that we feel that perhaps needs to be responded to, I think, it's not unreasonable for this board to make those sort of suggestions. And whether that's more to then, rather than saying something substantive of you must go and do this, or rather than but as opposed to perhaps saying, this is something that we'd like to be an emphasis of continued monitoring and ideas. I think that would be a good thing. Anyway, completely different what I actually wanted to ask, and with apologies, because I was at for a minute or two I had to go and get my my laptop charger. So if I missed this, apologies. But in terms of the social media reach, I'm wondering if we're now using or have a presence on Nextdoor, which seems to be emerging as something which has a sort of unique characteristic of having these very local these very local groups, normally at useful for councillors, normally at about a ward level, but also it would be, I could see it potentially being useful for getting messaging about particular sangs and what's going on. And so I want to raise that question, whether you thought about how you might be able to use that as a tool for getting the messaging out.
No, is the simple answer to that one. Never heard of it, but happily our communications team are Nikki and Sarah between them are fantastic. So I shall bring it to them and see what they suggest we do with it, if that's all right.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I would certainly second that Nextdoor can be a useful medium for getting news out about events and things like that. So yeah, certainly second that point.
Exciting. Thank you.
Sean.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to echo everything you've said around the energy levels that the team brought. That was brilliant. Thank you. Much more inspiring than an executive meeting last night where I took a morning. I will take a steer from the chair on this, but one of the things I've been working on locally with another hat on, which is Surrey Heath Partnership that I chair, related to community safety in its broadest remit, is the opportunities to expand the public spaces protection orders that we have in place, which is usually about antisocial behaviour, usually stuff like alcohol and drug use, all this kind of stuff. However, I noted from the regular drip feed I get from around the country of what's going on with councils, that a number of councils have put in ones to address fire risks. And so I have put it to my team that I would like to explore that as an opportunity for Surrey Heath.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, I have a meeting with, which was long delayed due to all these blooming elections we having in 2 minutes, with Surrey Fire and Rescue Service tomorrow. It's one of the 3 topics I want to raise with them, because they're the statutory body that obviously would be most interested in this. If it's of interest and it's not been done by any other of the local authorities within the partnership, I'm happy for Surrey Heath to take the lead on it. But I would potentially like somebody from the partnership to be in the loop, as it could have implications for the partnership in terms of enforcement. So what this potentially bans is things like open fires, not bonfires, barbecues, etc., etc. And it allows people who are empowered to challenge anybody that's doing that, and obviously seek police support should the need be required. So if that's not been discussed before, it looks like it hasn't, and happy that we take the lead on it, perhaps put a package together and bring it back to the group. But I think it would be helpful to have somebody from the partnership involved, because it's potentially the wardens that might be part of the enforcement's too strong a word. Communication, informing people that they are breaking a rule that is placed. I also noted in the report back some other dodgy activity that's going on in various places, and it could be that we can reflect on whether that can be included in any update of our public spaces protection orders, and again we can bring that back to the group as well.
Well, I think that sounds great. Certainly the fire awareness. I know we were talking about sort of responding to the data, and I want to come back to the birds in just a moment. But with the wildfire, I hadn't been on the project very long. I think it was 2001 or so. We had spectacular wildfires, and so obviously we need to be doing something more about that. And that's when we came up with the idea of Wildfire Awareness Week, which now happily Marley at Surrey Fire and Rescue, I think she's now the lead on it. So maybe Marley will be at the meeting that you're at tomorrow. I don't know. But would you like any one of us to go? Or are you
no, you don't need to come to the meeting. But I just like confirmation. Not right. Doesn't have to be right now. Maybe offline. Who would be the contact point for that discussion? If it's yourself, Ruth, that's fine. I'm probably hypersensitive to it due to my professional background previously in the oil and gas industry, but also my wife's from Galicia, and from about March onwards, there's a spotter plane flying around trying to monitor fire risk. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think yes, George and Victoria and Zoe. If Sean comes back to me with what was found there, and we'll we'll do that.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And assuming that there's no, I don't know, lifelong rivals to Surrey Heath here in the chat, I think we're quite content, Sean, for you to take the lead on this, and as you say, report back at the next group. Unless there are deep rivals to Surrey Heath. I don't know who is a deep rival to Surrey Heath, but maybe it's Bracknell Forest. I don't know, but we're quite happy with that.
Yeah, just an example, Dorset's got them in place, New Forest has got them in place, 3 boroughs in Lancashire have got it in place due to their moorland fires. So these are things we can learn from as part of this journey.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Liz, before I go on to you, I'm conscious also that Jerry had a question in the chat. Jerry, if you want to come in and talk about that, please.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Chairman. No, I didn't expect to participate, but I could write pages of background. It's a question that I've been asking for nearly 20 years. It really is. Can you give us a steer on when you expect the necessary evidence to be available, demonstrating the effectiveness of the SANG and SAM strategy? When will it be available in a detailed appropriate assessment? I say obviously that. It's the LPA's responsibility to produce the appropriate assessment, compliant with people over wind, on the basis of the information provided by the developer. But the developer is going to have to get their information from Natural England and from the councils. The whole point of the original delivery framework was that we have an appropriate assessment, but that couldn't be done at the time back in 2009. So we've been waiting for this since. And so whenabouts are we likely to get the evidence that require giving us the convincing objective evidence to Wadensee standard from the MPPF footnote 65? When are we likely to have that standard of evidence demonstrating that the effectiveness or the extent to which the mitigation measures are effective, so that developers and councillors can be confident in their decision making? So really, it's a timescale thing, because we don't have a Daria anymore, and she was working on that, so I imagine it's been held up a bit. Thanks.
Well, certainly one of the more detailed questions we've had of late. No, I don't know, Ruth, if you or Stephen, you have, I don't know if you can see his question in the chat, but if you have any initial impressions on that first.
My initial impression is that I will be asking Darren and Mark what we haven't, what we're missing, because my impression from them is that we do have lots of evidence, but what more do we need? So I would take it to them, Jerry, if that's all right with you.
I was going to say,
We obviously want a single document, you know, on as few pages as possible that produces the evidence that shows that, the extent to which different sorts of SANGs are effective, and the SAM strategy working with it. But you know,
and I can see, I can see how that's difficult to condense down into just a few pages, because you can see how
the minimum, if it's 200 pages, that's okay, because it's a standard document that shows us, you know, that what we're doing is working or isn't, or the extent to which it's working is the issue here, because we know that some SANGs are working. We're going to assume that some aren't, and we want to stop doing the things that aren't working and concentrate on the things that are, so that we've got a really effective, and so that we can demonstrate the effectiveness of that job.
If I interject, clearly this is going to require an offline answer. So I think the easiest thing to say, Jerry, is we'll go away and we'll get back to you with an answer that we'll not just share with you, but the rest of the board as well. So I think that's the way we'll proceed on that one.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
No problem. Liz.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. Obviously, great work being done on the education side and with all the events and guided walks and things like that. I was just wondering on the question that Jonathan asked earlier. I've had a quick look at the terms of reference of this group, and it does seem to fit within that, to be able to look at, you know, perhaps hopefully I understood your point correctly, the bird numbers in a bit more depth. I was a little bit disappointed that particular slide, we didn't have more information on it, you know, from the monitoring side, that we just had a down arrow and up arrow and all that, and it would be, it would be good to you know, understand more about what key indicators are being used, other than it just going, well, there was a fire and the weather was bad. You know, it would be good, and I'm sure there are a whole range of things behind that, and it would be interesting to know what key indicators are being used there, and also perhaps the different biodiversity markers. You know, that, you know, what is increasing, what is improving, you know, what is not improving. So some of those biodiversity markers, it would be really interesting to see some of that information as well, so that we can have a clear idea of that, because I've got a really clear idea of the events works you're doing and all of the education and all of that, and the Heathland hounds and all that, but I haven't really got a clear idea of that, like the biodiversity work you're doing, you know, and how you're doing that kind of, if at all. Maybe you're not doing that. Maybe I've got the wrong idea of what you're doing. So just need to understand who's doing that work, perhaps, if it is another body doing that. Sorry if that's a ridiculous question, Ruth, because, you know, and also the data analyst position, which I know has been vacant, and I just wondered, you know, has that been vacant for a long time, and you know, I wondered why, you know, in such a lovely team that you've obviously got, why somebody hadn't been shooting in there and desperate to join you, because obviously that is an important role for the monitoring side of things, and as much as, you know, outsourcing it is obviously you're still getting that monitoring, but it's great to have that person on the ground who's interacting with you on a daily basis, and I'm sure picks up more information from you. So that would be a good thing to know as well. I mean, I'm not disappointed with your Twitter figures at all. You know, Twitter has become a bit of a strange beast since it became X. I'm not sure your audience is there at all. I would think that maybe concentrating more on Instagram and upping those figures might be better. And obviously next door was mentioned as well, because that may be where you'll attract, you know, a younger audience as well, perhaps, on there. So I think, you know, it's, and I'm sure your comms team are looking at, you know, where your audience is and where your audience is sitting and how to, you know, attract them. So you know, Twitter may not be where your audience is, you know, at all. So anyway, so I would love to be able to join you on the 3rd of September, but unfortunately I don't think I can, because I've got meetings most that day, so I'd be really disappointed, unfortunately. So a few questions there. Thank you.
I wonder if maybe for folks that can't make the 3rd, maybe we need to have something else that we can do. Maybe Lizzie and I could spend some time together and it's just on Teams or something, maybe, if that's convenient. With the bird numbers, we do have a wonderful textured background to the bird numbers as they are. It's difficult to gauge sometimes where to present the information and how much detail to give. So very simple graphic. And we use that when we're in a lot of our imagery, just to give people a flavour of where the birds are going. I think I mentioned the AMP partnership, and we do discuss the challenges that we've got ongoing with the partnership at our quarterly meetings, and the bird numbers are discussed regularly and what we can do to help and enable. And so that is another thing that's in hand. I wonder how to get you the textured information that you'd like. Maybe you could come for an AMP meeting if you would like to. You'd be, of course, extremely welcome to. Or maybe we could have a chat and you could ask me. I can try and give you a bit more detail of or if we haven't got the detail, go and find it, because that's possible too. So, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely. If we could meet offline, just do a quick Teams and and just discuss some of the things that I'll be and have a better understanding and not be boring everybody else on the committee going through things that they may well already know. Thank you, Bruce.
I'd be delighted. Thank you.
I'm conscious of time now. We've got half an hour left scheduled in the meeting, but I think we have a couple more questions. Adam?
Thank you. And I'm conscious, obviously, I've already asked the question, but I just want to very quickly come in on very interesting comments that Councillor Jerry Hyman was making, and just something to add maybe to that offline dialogue, perhaps looking at the approach for the planning inspectorate. So both at the plan making stage and decision making stages on appeal, presumably, if developer obligations relating to SANG and SAM have been raised by appellants or during the examination of a plan and the particular Thames Basin Heath's policies that our plans have now all adopted, just to try and understand what the approach to defending those policies or those planning obligations were, and what, again, Natural England's kind of responses might have been as consultee in that process. I think maybe it's something to add to that, kind of offline discussion on to really understand the evidence base a bit better.
So could I ask, could you pop that in like a little email to me or in writing, and then I can take it and give it to Derwin and Mark, and then we can come up with an answer to it, if that's okay? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Last question, Jerry.
Thanks. I just wanted to be perhaps helpful, if I may, in respect of the question that Jonathan Glenn, Councillor Glenn, brought up about the woodlark situation, and the issue of habitats restoration. And I think it's important for people to understand that from the very start, it's been accepted that habitats restoration is not within the remit. That's what the girls from Natural England were trying to say. I think it's not within the remit of the JSPB. The reason for that is because Article 6.1 and 6.2 of the directive made it that there is a responsibility of each of the national nature organisations, whatever you call them, Natural England here, have the responsibility of having a management plan for each of the SSSIs, which are part of the heaths, the protected spas, and they have the responsibility of improving the conservation status of each of those SSSIs and in line with the plan. And so that can't be used as mitigation. So that's why it cannot be part of the remit of the JSPB, because the JSPB is acting on behalf of developers providing mitigation. So, when you're looking at what can we do about the Dartford warbler, about the woodlark numbers being lower, that is a Natural England responsibility, but it is outside of the responsibility of the JSPB. I think that's what they'd tell you if they were here. So you might just save you a few minutes of trying to pursue it there, in as much as it isn't part of a mitigation package. It has been tried and looked at in the past a few times. Can we bring it within? But it's always been decided no, we can't. So if I can be just helpful on that, so I'll leave it at that because we're short of time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've got time necessarily for a debate. It's really just questions at this stage. I mean, Jonathan, if you very quickly want to come back.
I realise that we want to get onto the money. The point is, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that we do it, but if we don't actually bring this to the attention of the right body, we would be remiss in let's say highlighting this. And I think we need to highlight it and pass it on to the right people and let them get on with it. Otherwise, people are going to say, what's the point? Now, I accept all the arguments I've been given that it's not our job, but we need to take some interest in what's happening, because if the bird numbers go down, the developers are going to say, why are we paying you? Okay? And I would hate this, the work that we do to disappear purely because the bird numbers go down. I think we should carry on, Chairman.
Thank you, everyone. Ruth, Zoe, Victoria, thank you for your very thorough report and answering everyone's questions. I then move on to the next agenda item, which is the Thames Basin Heath financial update, or the SAM project, I should say, financial update, which will be done by Jenny. So, Jenny.
So, hopefully, you'll bear with me, that should be popping up for everybody now. Okay, so do shout if you can't see them, or equally if I'm too quiet and I need to turn my volume up. So I just thought I'd start with a couple of introductory slides, really, to talk through what the role of the administrative body is for the newer members of the group, because it's actually quite a narrow remit and probably a little bit narrower than people expect. So effectively, as we've said before, we act as the banker. So it's down to the local planning authorities who set and collect the tariff income, and they then submit quarterly returns with the money they've collected to HCC. In terms of the expenditure, so Natural England will submit their expenses via invoices to HCC to pay, and also will pay the invoices for Arling Close, etc. HCC then report on the income collected and the expenditure incurred, which is the report we've got here. Also, an increasing activity over the last few years is that we have been making investments on behalf of the partnership. But as people will have got fed up of me saying, we cannot give independent financial advice. So it's always on the basis of the instructions of the board, having listened to the advice of Arling Close, who are the independent financial advisors. We also do include forward projections of the income and expenditure, but again, that's largely based on the forecast that we're receiving in from the LPAs, and also Natural England telling us what their expenditure is likely to be going forward. Just a quick recap as well on the financial aims of the project. So very broadly, to fund the project in perpetuity, which, as we've said, we use 80 years from the April 2010, which was the commencement of the projects. The very early years, originally it was expected that the tariff income would come in from the developers building the houses in the area, but the expectation was that that would stop at some point in time. So the idea was to invest that money so that we can generate an income that covers off the ongoing annual maintenance in perpetuity. And we've talked really about the annual expenditures, primarily Natural England's costs. But also we do have a fee that's paid to HCC as the administrative body, and also to Arling Close as the independent financial advisors. So very quickly, just the final position.
Can I quickly interrupt? Jerry, you've got your hand up. Is that a legacy hand, or did you really want to come in?
Sorry,
urgently?
legacy, my fault.
Okay, no worries. Sorry, Jennifer, carry on.
Sorry. So final position for the year just gone, ended 31st of March 24. So net income of £3.2 million there. As you can see, mainly the tariff income still coming through, but also a sizable chunk of dividend income and bank interest receivable. And I think the key point to notice here that the bank interest and the dividend income was more than enough to cover the annual expenditure this year, or year just gone. However, probably worth bearing in mind that interest rates have been particularly high recently. So we did get 5% on bank interest. We normally allow for about 2% going forwards on our bank interest. And also dividend income was quite high. We allow for about 4% in our forecast going forwards. So a good news picture for this year, but just a little bit of caution to bear in mind that it was a very good year for bank interest. The maintenance fund that we hold, so this is a fund set up to cover the annual expenditure of the project. We agreed last time that we were going to increase the balance we hold in that fund to the equivalent of 3 years annual expenditure. So we're currently holding about £2.5 million in that fund, which is an increase from £1.5 million that had been set at previously. And we draw from the endowment fund or pay into the endowment fund as necessary to keep that balance at that level. So the endowment fund is a bank account set up to generate the investment income to continue to fund the project in perpetuity. So our balance as at the end of March this year, 21 million, of which just under 40 million pounds held in investments and just over 7.5 million pounds held as a cash balance, and that's held by HCC on behalf of the partnership. That cash balance is expected to increase to 13.6 million by March 2027. Obviously, a little bit of caution needed with regard to that. We are trying to project forward 3 or so years into the future. But for the year just gone, a net 2.2 million was added to the endowment fund, and also the investment. So that's cash that was added to the fund. The investments increased in value by that £286,000. But Greg from Marling Close is going to be joining us very shortly to give a much more detailed update on the investments. So I won't dwell on that too much here. So just very quickly to talk about the projected position for the 3 years going forwards to March 2027. So that's cumulative income that we're forecasting of around 6 million over those 3 years. Again, as you can see there, the investment income, so dividends and bank interest, we're expecting about £2.5 million compared to about £2.4 million expenditure currently forecast over those 3 years. So we're still at the point where the investment income is covering the annual expenditure, which again is a really good position to be in. Just a couple of quick charts to compare it back to what we said in the very original modelling when the partnership was first set up. So we were looking at getting in total tariff income of around 35 million. So that's the blue line. So just assumed here it would rise evenly over the years before tailing off. The red line is what we've actually got. So you can see our tariff income is actually above what we'd originally projected to get. That does include, again, projections going forward. So we do need to be a little bit cautious. So more income coming in than we had originally envisaged. And that's allowed us actually to up our expenditure a little bit. So the blue line, again, is where we expected to be with the annual expenditure. The red line is what we are actually incurring and projecting for the few years going forwards. So then finally, very briefly, just to go through the conclusions. So the financial position is a very positive one. So the net income for this year just gone did exceed our forecast. We now have the more prudent balance in the maintenance fund, that £2.5 million. The endowment fund has increased, both on the cash and the investment elements. And the financial modelling that we do continues to give us assurance that we are looking at meeting that goal of long-term financial sustainability. And again, just need to caveat that with that does assume we will get bank interest of 2%, dividends of 4%, and inflation stays at around the 2% level. So there are still some assumptions that we're making for that to happen. But like I say, the evidence that we've got so far is a good, solid financial position. And I've just cut and pasted the recommendations in there very briefly, but I think what I will do is to stop presenting, she says, that I can see for any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Conscious of time, so I'd ask if you'd consider if any questions could be done offline, but if there's any urgent questions, please do ask, or any comments that you'd like to make. Sean.
Sorry, Guy, you'll learn not to invite me as a sub to these meetings. First of all, thanks ever so much for the update, really, and the report, very, very clear. I've got a couple of quick questions. In terms of the projected houses into the future, which obviously leads to the tariff that comes in, roughly what date do we go out there before we sort of say we don't know what we don't know yet? Is it 2040, which would be typically the kind of local plan horizon, or is it further than that?
So we're very much dependent on what the local planning authorities give us for their projections. I don't think we even quite go up to 2040 yet. I think we might be a couple of years before that. And what tends to happen is the next couple of years, if you like, get updated. The following years tend to stay as rough high-level projections for quite some time. So yeah,
Okay.
we don't really go beyond that.
So in all likelihood, we're probably undercooking the potential revenue into the future. So that was one quick thing. The second one is, I noticed a bit, if I looked at the pattern of the expenditure over the last few years, there was a bit of a step change where we seem to have gone from a baseline of around 600,000 to 800,000. What's the context to that? And you know, just because we have the money doesn't mean we should spend it. You know, I guess that's where I'm coming from.
No, absolutely. And every time the budgets are put forward by Natural England for the board to agree, I think at that point, I probably should say in the history of it, it took a little while for the wardens to be recruited. So we have quite a lot of lower spend in the early years whilst the wardens were being recruited. That point where we go up, I think we had the change in structure of the wardening. So there was a very specific report that Ruth brought to the board to be approved. And also in terms of, I think it was the collector counting, not got the right term, have I, Ruth, going out externally as well was an additional bit of spend we had, but it was brought to the board as a specific paper for approval. So I think we're not expecting to have that step change again, are we?
Okay, I've got two questions around the sort of investment strategy. Is that for the colleague that's joining then? Would that be better?
Yes.
Fine, done.
Probably,
thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No, in that case, Jennifer, can you do me a favour? Can you bring up the recommendations again, please? Because we do have an item to action.
Let me just switch to the right slide, it says. Oops, there we go.
Okay, so colleagues, we have these recommendations to either agree or not. Before I go into approval or not, any comments that people want to make? No, I just simply say I think these are sound and financially prudent, so I'm happy to propose them. Do I have a second?
Happy to second.
Who's that then?
Mark Brunel-Walker.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brunel-Walker. Please shout if you dissent to approving these things. I think that's easier than all of us waving frantically in the air.
I just want to say that I'm abstaining. That's Councillor Glenn.
Okay. So unless you want to disclaim an abstention or vote down, we'll take it as unanimously agreed beyond that abstention. So thank you, everyone. Jennifer, thank you for the report. I believe you go straight into the investment working group update.
I do, yeah. So I shall just keep the slides up and keep going. So very quickly, current members of the investment working group, we have Councillor Glenn from Hampshire County Council and Councillor Bermange from the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead. We do need a new member. Technically, the membership should be 3 members of the board plus a representative from Arlene Close. So hopefully everybody has been thinking about the invite that I think was sent out with the agenda. Just the remit there to review and recommend policies, actions to the board in respect to the investments, but all the decisions will be made by the JSPB, and that's in accordance with the independent financial advice from Arlene Close. Recommendations of the IWG, not to this report, but what the IWG are putting forward is that there are no changes this time to the investment strategy or the responsible investment policy, both of which are included as appendices to the report, mainly because they were reviewed and updated at the last board meeting. So no changes have been discussed since then. And also the IWG recommending that we accept Arlene Close's advice, which we'll hear from Greg in a moment, is to keep the cash that we have in the endowment fund as a cash balance for now, whilst bank interest rates are currently high. Couple of tables I've just picked out from the report. So on the left-hand side is the table of the investments that we've made so far. So, and those are the amounts that we have invested. So we've invested £15 million. You'll see from the report that's not the market value at the moment because we had that dip during the COVID pandemic. Again, Greg will talk more on that, so don't take me as a financial expert at all. And the table on the right is the income that we're projecting to get in and the cash balance, importantly, that we're expecting to have in the endowment fund, which is the balance that is available for investment. So the £7.5 million that we've got now rising to the £13.5 million expected in 3 years' time. This little graph I'll talk through very, very quickly. It's the financial modelling we do just to try and look at where we're going to be in 80 years' time, and is the money going to be enough that we're earning? Lots of assumptions in these graphs, obviously bearing in mind they're looking forward 80 or so years, but it's just to demonstrate that we base things on a ongoing inflation of 2% on average, and we look at an investment return of around 4% on average. And with that, it looks as though the money would start to run out at about 80 years' time. Obviously, there are things we can do to stop that in terms of looking at the expenditure and so forth. But you can see with the other graphs, if that investment return dips to 3% or 2%, it looks as though the money would run out sooner before that. So it's just to give the indication, really, that the 4% return on investment that we typically tend to target looks to be about right in order to keep the project going for those 80 years of perpetuity, obviously with lots of caveats surrounding the forward look. And those are the recommendations of the report from the investment working group.
Thank you, Jennifer. First of all, any questions or comments on the report that Jennifer's just given? Liz.
Thank you. It's just a general question, actually. I'm not sure that it sits in this bit or the previous bit, but obviously in the agenda pack there was more details were provided, and it talked about reducing investments in products such as fossil fuels, controversial weapons, etc., etc. And I just wondered how that is being monitored within this group. You know, I know that's the aspiration, but where is it being monitored?
So I think that one is initially covered off by the investment working group. Look at that in conjunction with Greg from Arling Close. There are questions that are brought up quite regularly at this board, actually, on the investment policy. But I think I will need to hand over to my fellow or the investment working group members for any further comments on that one.
Oh, you're on mute, Jonathan.
We do look at this every time we have our meetings, because we have our own pre-agenda meetings as the IWG, and because I'm actually on the pension panel as well, and I've spent my whole life in investments. So these are questions that we ask all the time, and we work very closely with Greg to make sure that it's being addressed. It's never perfect. But we are well aware of people's feelings and attitudes towards the future.
So can I ask, Jonathan, is that you know, has it been staying pretty static? Has it been going up, down? You know, where has that been sitting?
In my opinion, we are investing less in fossil fuels. But put that question to Greg when he comes on.
Okay.
I'm conscious in about 10 minutes I'm going to have to run off to a 3-hour Heathrow meeting, so we may have to deal with that if that happens. So if I can perhaps ask the next two questioners to be brief if possible. Sean. Sean? Yep.
Always happens. 1 in 10 it happens. Sorry about that. So yeah, my point was very similar. I felt the wording around the investment strategy was quite weak and wishy-washy with respect to the intention of this organisation in the preservation of unique habitats and environments. Should I be required in any way to vote on that investment strategy, I would vote against it on principle, because I think we can do better and we should aim to do better. That's notwithstanding the great work that various councillors have done within the sub-working group, but I think the world has changed, and I think we need to up our game and be a little bit more leaders here. That's one point. But the second point was around the split between the cash and the investment strategy. In the endowment pot between cash and investments. I guess that would be re-looked at when interest rates fall, because we don't need the money in the short term. We're going to need it in Never Never Land time, and therefore, in theory, investments will help us. But that wasn't quite clear from the write-up that it would be pushed on to investments in the future. But I take that as an implicit understanding. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. And when Greg comes on, he will talk to that actually, and the discussions at the investment working group is at this particular time, it's wise to hold it as cash, but to keep that under very careful review.
And to carry on from that, we agreed some time ago during the period when interest rates were at 0.05% and stuck there for about 10 years. That's when we started discussing the possibility of investing some of the money. And we were very clear that we weren't going to try and make millions out of it and take big chances. The investments are actually in very low risk areas right now, which is why we use Arling Close, because they deal with local government generally. So although there were, in the past, there have been councillors who said, let's go, believe it or not, let's go into cyber chipping and all that sort of thing, which is ludicrous, okay? Because they were just intent on making money. That's not the remit here. It was purely to get it out of the doldrums. And if we're getting 5%, that's great. If we're getting even 4.5%, that's great. But the point is, if the interest rates start going back down again, which they will, as what we're expecting, obviously the discussions are going to be around when do we, let's move cash from cash into the endowment or into investments. And actually, I'm thinking, Sean, that you should be put forward for a member of the working group.
Unfortunately, Sean is a substitute.
Yeah, well, somebody's. I want someone like Sean in the group. Okay.
I was gonna, in fact, lead on nicely to this because Adam. Well, we better answer Adam's question first, if it can be very quick, Adam.
Yeah, it is, and in fact, it probably will facilitate what you're about to say, because I was just going to talk about my own experience being part of the working group, and I think it is a really, valuable group. I find it really interesting, and certainly the advice we get from Arling Close and being able to deep dive what's happening and talking about, for example, looking at the probability of interest rates cuts in particular months and working out what that should mean for strategy. I think it's a very interesting thing. It seems quite far removed from Heathlands, but ultimately it's what's driving our ability to fund this project in perpetuity. And I think I would certainly advocate strongly for if people are kind of in two minds whether they'd like to, that it certainly is a worthwhile thing to be involved with. So I'll leave it there, but that's my pitch.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No, in that case, Jennifer, can you bring up the recommendations again? So Sean was referencing if we're to vote on the investment strategy. To be frank, we're just noting the investment strategy at this point, but I would certainly lead on from what Jonathan was implying, which is that if anyone wants to help really have a deep dive into the investment strategy, then I would seriously encourage you to join this group, because just having two is not good. So Jennifer, feel free to nod furiously if I'm wrong, but it is just twice a year, the meetings, is that correct? It's twice a year, and it gives that chance to really delve into this strategy. So please, no awkward silences. I hate awkward silences. Will anyone volunteer to sit on this group? Told you I hate awkward silences. I'm going to start picking someone out. Well, I should say that the previous member was, I think, Ian Pittock from Wokingham. So I don't know if his successor in Wokingham, hint, hint, Councillor Brunel Walker, might be interested.
Have I told you, Guy, how much lately I hate you? No, if there's no one else better, I've served on the LEP 15 years, looking at all of the grant funding and spending across Berkshire. So if nobody else has got a burning desire to do it, I will take it on.
Great.
You're a star, Councillor Brunel Walker.
Agreed.
Thank you. That was the last chance for anybody else that's better than me.
In that case, then, we've got ourselves a new member. Fabulous. I don't think we need to do anything formal on this, do we, Jennifer? Let's then get on to the recommendations. Unless anyone's got any comments or questions on the recommendations, I'd like to propose them. Do I have a second?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Adam. Shout if you abstain, dissent, etc. We've got an abstention from Jonathan. Thank you. Anyone else? No, we will take those as approved then. So thank you. I'm going to have to depart, everyone. Like I said, I've got a 3-hour meeting with Heathrow, but Jenny, I think you can take over as Democratic Services. Is that right, Jenny?
Yes, I can do it. I was just about to say, if we're going on to item 8, let me know and I will stop streaming to the public.
Well, I'll do that little perfunctory bit first.
Okay.
So this is to confirm that the press and public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of agenda item 7, as it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1, the Schedule 12A, the Local Government Act of 1972, specifically information related to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Jennifer, Jenny, no one from the press or public has snuck in during the course of this meeting, have they? In that case, we can go to private session. I'll bid you all adieu and let Jenny take over the next agenda item.
Thank you very much, Guy.
But I will say thank you all for your engagement, and I'd remind everyone, Ruth is going to send an email out about Heath Week events that we'd love you to share with other councillors. And please, if you can make some of these events, please do. If you cannot, please always be aware, drop Ruth a line, and we're always happy to make a warden available to come take